Welcome to the planning and public meeting of the Corporation of the Municipality of Central Elgin. Today is Monday, April the 13th at 5:30 here in the council chamber, as well as those that are joining us virtually. First on the agenda, Elgin Incentives Community Improvement Program. I'd like to welcome my friend Carolyn Cron, Manager of Economic Development and Strategic Initiatives for the County of Elgin, to provide the presentation. Ms. Cron, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor Sloan. Through you to Council, good evening. And I'm here to talk about the 2026 update to the Elgin Incentives Community Improvement Plan, or CIP. So this presentation will walk you through what the program is, why it's being updated, what's new, and how you can share your feedback. So this meeting is being held to meet the requirements of the Planning Act. Notice was provided in accordance with the Planning Act, and anyone is welcome to submit written or oral feedback. It's important to note that if someone wants to appeal the final decision later, the Planning Act requires that they first make a submission before the plan is approved. Next slide, please. So this section is going to provide a bit of context on the project, what we're updating, and why this is happening now. A Community Improvement Plan, or CIP, is a tool that municipalities can use under the Planning Act. It lets us identify areas that need improvement, creates a long-term strategy to support those areas, and it also allows us to offer financial incentives to private businesses. So we can provide support like grants or tax support, and this is to encourage private investment and community improvement. Next slide, please. So Elgin Incentives is Elgin County's community improvement plan. It's been around since 2015, and it's recognized as an award-winning program. It was the first of its kind where an upper-tier municipality supported community improvement through providing grants to lower-tier municipalities. So it currently has 12 financial incentive programs that support things like building improvements and conversions, facade updates, and signage on private property. While the county prepares, manages, and largely funds the program, each local municipality must formally adopt the plan for it to apply locally. Next slide, please. So we're now more than 10 years into Elgin Incentives, and it gives us a great opportunity to step back and look at how the program is performing. As you can see, we have supported 287 projects in Elgin County, and that is $1.56 million that the county has invested into these projects, and that was supported by a private investment of $9.44 million, and a total of 86 of those projects of that 287 projects happened in Central Elgin. Next slide, please. So after a decade, the county felt it was important to review what's working well, what's not, and what needs to change. So some of the incentives no longer align with the cost of work today, with policies or priorities. There also is a growing interest in housing and larger economic development projects. So this update is happening in two phases. The first phase was focused on background research and review, and the second phase that we are on right now focuses on updating the plan. Next slide. All right, so now we'll take a look at some of the background work. So the background review highlighted several key points. So grant amounts didn't keep up with rising construction and labor costs. There was an interest in housing incentives, which weren't included in the original plan. The plan could be clearer and more user-friendly, and there was a need to better support both existing local businesses and larger economic drivers. Overall, the plan needed a refresh to feel more modern and also to be more accessible. And based on that review, a set of recommendations were created. These included reorganizing the incentives, adding housing-focused programs, increasing the maximum grant amounts, and introducing new tools that municipalities could use to lead community improvement initiatives. And there was also a strong focus on simplifying the program so that it's easier to understand and administer. All right, so now we're going to take a look at the updated plan. So on the next slide, you'll see the vision statement. There was no change to this vision statement. It's still relevant. The plan continues to focus on county-wide economic development, supporting improvements to buildings and communities, and also helping to diversify the local economy over the next 10 years. On the next slide, we have the goals. So the goals have been updated to better reflect current priorities. They include creating more affordable and attainable housing, improving main streets in core areas, supporting rural and agritourism development, improving building efficiency and sustainability, and encouraging overall economic growth and vitality. Next slide, please. So to simplify things, the original 12 incentives were consolidated into 6 main programs, and we added 2 brand new housing programs. Funding limits now vary by program, but overall support can't exceed 50% of eligible project costs. As before, incentives are administered and funded by the county, and local municipalities can choose whether or not to participate by contributing their own funds. So now we're on to the programs or the funding programs. So the first here is the Facade, Signage, and Property Improvement Program. And this supports visible building upgrades covering up to half the cost of construction, professional, and application fees to the maximum amount of $18,500. The Brownfield program supports the cleanup and redevelopment of contaminated sites, including study grants, temporary tax cancellation, and a longer-term tax increment grant to encourage redevelopment. Next slide. So our building improvement and sustainability, or our building improvement conversion and expansion program supports larger redevelopment or renovation projects. And this can include a tax increment grant. And then the Building Efficiency and Sustainability Program focuses on projects related to energy efficiency and sustainable upgrades, helping reduce environmental impacts. Next slide. And the Industrial Stimulus Program encourages industrial growth using tax increments with additional support for very large developments. So I'll take a moment to explain what a tax increment equivalent grant is. So let's say you have a vacant property and you're paying taxes on that vacant property, and now you build a $40,000 not a 40,000, a 40,000 square foot facility on this vacant lot. That will increase your property taxes. So with a tax increment equivalent grant, you can get that increase rebated to you for a period of 5 or 10 years. So the way it works is the first year you could get 100% of that increase rebated. The next year that decreases to 90%, and it continues to decrease by 10%. So for our smaller projects, that is a 5-year grant. And if you are considering a facility that is 60,000 square feet or greater, you may be eligible for a 10-year tax rebate, and that continues to decrease 10% per year. And then the Agritourism and Rural Diversification Program supports improvements related to farm-based businesses and rural activities. So again, if there's construction on an agritourism experience, you can get up to 50% of that project through a maximum of $10,000. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the 2 new housing-related grants. There is the Affordable Rental Housing Program, and it supports the creation of new affordable rental units, including planning costs and annual tax-based incentives. And these tax-based incentives are directly tied to the rent. So the rent does need to be below market rent, and it depends on where you fall with that, how much you are eligible to receive in return. And then the Additional Dwelling Unit Program helps homeowners add secondary units like basement apartments or garden suites. And again, that can cover the materials and costs up to $10,000 to do that. So next we are on to our municipal leadership initiatives. So these are new non-financial tools that municipalities and the county can use to support community improvement. So they're optional, flexible, and they depend on council priorities and available resources. So when they're used alongside the incentives, they can strengthen overall results from the private community improvement projects. So the first one that we're going to look at is streetscaping and public space strategy. So this initiative, and we can just go to the next slide, I believe. Thank you. So this initiative focuses on improving public spaces, things like sidewalks, crossings, lighting, trees, public art, and accessibility. So the goal is to make communities more attractive, walkable, and welcoming. So again, having this initiative in the CIP identifies that this is an area that our local municipalities and the county can work on collaboratively or with private partners to create these welcoming communities. And then on the next slide, we have the public land inventory and opportunity analysis. So this initiative involves creating an inventory of publicly owned lands and assessing their potential for things like housing, employment, or green space. So this would help inform partnerships, funding opportunities, and long-term planning decisions. And now we have our brownfield inventory. So this will build on the brownfield incentive by mapping and tracking contaminated or underused sites. So having this inventory will make it easier for us to target incentives and to also coordinate redevelopment efforts. Next slide, please. So we're also proposing a ready-to-build ADU catalog. So this initiative would create a set of pre-approved or pre-review additional dwelling unit designs. So this would be to make it easier and faster for homeowners to create additional housing while ensuring that designs meet regulations. And then our final initiative is climate change adaptation and resiliency. And this initiative focuses on making communities more resilient to climate impacts. Examples include green infrastructure, building retrofits, expanding tree canopy, and using climate resilient design in municipal projects. So we're now on to next steps, what happens after the meeting tonight. So following this public meeting, all feedback will be reviewed and used to refine the plan. County Council is expected to review and consider endorsing this plan later this month. After that, it will go back to the local councils for adoption by bylaw. So if there are no appeals within the required time period, the updated CIP would take effect, and we would then make an announcement of when the program is open for application. And we're now on to the feedback. So we really want to hear from you. Please use the QR code to visit the project website to learn more about the CIP. My contact information is also on the screen, and you can use that to submit any feedback that you might have about the CIP update. Thank you very much. And with that, I would be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cron. Quick question to start. The seed money that started this plan came from where? You mentioned it briefly, and
So County Council provided the funds for this.
thank you. And the 15,000, that was the old maximum or the new maximum?
15,000 was the old maximum.
New maximum?
So that it is different by program. So I believe one program has an $18,500 maximum, and then the tax increment grants would be higher than that, depending again on the increase in taxation.
Very good. Any questions from the council? Councillor, whoop, we've got the wrong name. You're not Councillor Watson, you're Councillor Griffin. Please go ahead.
Hi, Carolyn. Thank you so much. I was especially excited reading through this weekend about the housing initiatives, and I was wondering about the ADU catalogs because it looked like that was something that you intended to be specific to each municipality. And yet, if enough of us are interested in doing that, then I would imagine there must be at least some overlap where we may have similar policies in place, and there might be at least some catalog items that could be cross-compatible. Is that something that you could potentially facilitate cost sharing on so that we can share same designs and things and make that more available?
Through you, Mayor Sloan, to Councillor Griffin, yes, that is absolutely possible. And there are some municipalities that already have ADU catalogs, so I'm sure we would reach out to them and they are generally willing to share. So there is something that we can work with already, and that's if we have enough municipalities interested, I'm sure that's something that we could consider collaborating on.
Other questions from council? Councillor Watson, please.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. We have something called an ARU, additional residential unit. And if they wanted to apply for an additional dwelling unit, could they use some grant money to help them get that going forward? Just a question.
Through you, Mayor Sloan, yes, that is correct.
As this is a public meeting for this, the gallery is able to ask questions should they wish to, or if anyone online. I'm going to do a quick scan here. It doesn't seem to be anyone coming forward rapidly. I'll go back to council to see if there's any other further questions for Ms. Cron. Seeing none, thank you. At the end of the day, we always appreciate it when you join us and look forward to this coming back to us in the near future. So again, our thanks, Ms. Cron. This is a public meeting as required by the Planning Act. I'm starting actually with a technical amendment, rather. We've got a technical amendment, 1325-43865, and I think Mark Andrews, the manager of planning, is going to come forward. Mr. Andrews, please.
Thank you, Chair Sloan, members of committee. So this is just a technical amendment. So an application for a minor variance was heard by committee on November 10th of 2025. The requested variance was for a front yard depth of 14.7 meters as opposed to the required 19.8 meters for a dwelling in the Township of Yarmouth bylaw. However, the decision that was signed by committee had a clerical typo in it, and it was actually typed as 15.7 meters. So the Planning Act does not require a formal meeting to be held so long as the report that was, the staff report had correctly delineated that number. So there is a process that a new decision will need to be signed by committee tonight, just reflecting that corrected clerical error of 14.7 meters as opposed to the 15.7. So nothing formal. There is no formal process other than to sign a new decision.
Appreciate that, and thank you. Duly noted. Moving forward, this public meeting is required by the Planning Act to provide an opportunity to provide input with respect to a proposed minor variance at 212 Orchard Street, 43900 Fruit Ridge Line, 43599 Sparta Line, and 6012 Sunset Road, all in the municipality of Central Elgin. Does any member of the committee have a disclosure of interest? Regarding 212 Orchard Street, Ms. Leach, what method of notice and when was notice given to the public, please?
Mr. Chair, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was hand-delivered to every owner, or notice was mailed by regular post, rather, to every owner of land within 60 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on April 2nd, 2026. Notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff and also posted to the municipal website.
Thank you. Sir, I take it you might be either the applicant or agent. So if you are, if you could just press the button and state your name and we'll listen to your presentation.
So good evening, Mr. Chair, member of committee, administration, and member of public. This is my first presentation. I'm new staff, so I would like to introduce myself. My name is Mohammed Mughal, senior planner with the planning department. And it's honor and pleasure for me to be part of the municipality and to serve such an active and wonderful community. So
Sorry, I didn't know who you were. I apologize, Mohammed. I think Councillor Watson actually went over and introduced himself because we haven't met before. So you'll accept my apologies. I thought you might have been the applicant. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
yeah, so I would like to present my minor variance application. The application number is COA 0326. The subject property is located municipally known as 212 Orchard Street and located at the corner of, can you, next slide, please. Yeah, the subject property is municipally known as 212 Orchard Street and located at the corner of Jamison Street and Orchard Street. The property is approximately 292 square meter in size with a lot frontage of 50 meter on a Jamison Street and 19 meter on Orchard Street. Currently, the subject property is occupied by legal non-conforming residential unit, two-story residential unit, and surrounding land uses are primarily low-density residential. Next slide, please. The subject property, official plan designates the subject property as commercial and currently zoned as Business Zone 1. The whole area is basically primarily low residential use. Next slide, please. If you see the site plan, the applicant proposes the replacement of the existing porch, which is accessed from the Orchard Street. The existing covered porch basically historically been located within the exterior side yard of the property and is accessed from the Orchard Street as well. Next slide, please. So in response to public meeting notice, no comments received from any member of public and no comments or concerns expressed by internal department and external agencies as well. We just received one comments from the engineering department that the applicant need to enter into the encroachment agreement with the municipality. Last slide, please. So staff recommend the subject application be approved with the condition that the applicant enter into the encroachment agreement with the municipality. And staff is of opinion that the proposed minor variance minor is nature. It doesn't negatively impact the surrounding context, and it's desirable for the property as well. Thank you.
Ms. Leach, have you received any written submissions on the proposal?
Mr. Chair, correspondence was received from the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority confirming that the subject lands are affected by regulations under the Conservation Authorities Act, and the KCCA was provided the front porch addition drawings and has issued clearance for the project.
Any questions from the council? Is there anyone in the gallery or online that wishes to speak to this, please? Seeing none, everyone has been provided a fair opportunity to be heard. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Those wanting to be notified of the committee's decision should contact the municipality. Moving forward, minor variance 43900 Fruit Ridge Line. Ms. Leach, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for the meeting, please?
Mr. Chair, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner. "60 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on April 2nd, 2026. Notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff and also posted to the municipal website."
Any submissions on the proposal, Ms. Leach, please?
Mr. Chair, correspondence was received from the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority confirming no objection and that the subject lands are not affected by natural hazard regulations under the Conservation Authorities Act.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to this, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next minor variance application before committee is COA 0426. The subject property municipally known as 43900 Fruit Ridge Line, which is located west of the intersection of Centennial Road and Fruit Ridge Line. Next slide, please. The subject property is approximately 0.18 hectare, which is 1821 square meter in size, with a lot frontage of 31.40 square meter. The subject property currently occupied by 1.5 story single detached dwelling and a detached garage. And the surrounding land uses are primarily rural residential, agriculture, and natural heritage in nature. Next slide, please. The official plan designates the subject property as agriculture, which permits a single detached dwelling, and subject property currently zoned as OS1, which also permits rural residential. If you see the proposal, next slide, please. Yeah. Next slide, please. Next. Yeah. So if you see the proposal, the requested variants are to permit reduced front yard and side yard, and to facilitate the addition and alteration to the existing residential dwelling unit. If you see the side plan, the applicant proposes 8-meter side yard, whereas the bylaw required 15 feet. And if you see the front yard, the applicant proposes 55 feet, where the zoning bylaw requires 65 feet. Next slide, please. So in response to the public meeting notice, no comments concern received from any member of public, and staff expressed no concern or comments regarding the proposed development. Based on staff review, staff recommend the proposed minor variance be approved, as the proposed development meet the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and official plan. It's a minor in nature, and there's no negative impact to the surrounding context. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leach, well, first of all, written submissions, I think we've gotten, it's Kettle Creek, no one else. Is there anyone online or anyone that wishes to speak to this in the gallery? Any questions from council? Councillor Watson, please.
Yeah, through.
Councillor, I'm going to actually ask, I don't know if Matt is here or who's handling the drain file, but did someone want to answer Councillor Watson's question?
Yeah, through chair, our staff, engineering staff reviewed the proposal and they didn't express any concern. They before, I mean, they had some concern regarding for the grading but the applicant, they provided updated drawings. So staff expressed no concern. Yeah.
Councillor Griffin, please.
Thank you. Through you, yes. I attended the drain meeting that day, and it was a conversation that happened with Mr. Widner at the time as well. So there were not any concerns at the time when they looked around the property and discussed it.
Okay, any other questions? I think we're good to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Anyone wanting to be notified of the committee's decision should contact the municipality. This meeting, the committee adjustment is adjourned at 6:12. Thank you. So minor variance 4359 Sparta Line. Ms. Leach, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public, please?
Mr. Chair, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 60 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on April 2nd, 2026. Notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff and also posted to the municipal website.
Okay, have you received any written submissions regarding the proposal, please?
Mr. Chair, correspondence was received from the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority confirming no objection and that the subject lands are not affected by natural hazard regulations under the Conservation Authorities Act.
Thank you. Any questions from the council, please, the committee? Seeing none, any questions from those in the gallery or online? Seeing none, if the committee is okay, I think we'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. This meeting of the Committee of Adjustment is adjourned at 6:13. Minor variance 6012 Sunset Road. Ms. Leach, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for the meeting, please?
Mr. Chair, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 60 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on April 2nd, 2026. Notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff and also posted to the municipal website.
Perfect. Have you received any written submissions regarding the proposal, please?
Again, correspondence was received from the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority confirming no objection, that the subject lands are not affected by natural hazard regulations under the Conservation Authorities Act.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the public, either online or those that are here with us this evening? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. This meeting of the Committee of Adjustment is adjourned at 6:14 p.m. Moving along to a zoning bylaw amendment, 44558 Talbot Line. This is a public meeting as required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 44558 Talbot Line. Does any member of council have disclosure of interest concerning the proposal? Ms. Leach, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for the meeting, please?
Mr. Mayor, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on March 24th, 2026. Notice was physically posted to the property by municipal staff and also posted to the municipal website.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. Mr. Andrews, you're going to explain the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan, members of council. Tonight, I will be presenting the application for zoning bylaw amendment for 44558 Talbot Line in the former township of Yarmouth. Next slide, please. The subject lands are known municipally as 44558 Talbot Line and are located on the north side of Talbot Line between Yarmouth Center Road and Tower Road. It is an 18.4 hectare agricultural parcel containing a single detached dwelling. The lands were recently the subject of a severance application that was granted by the County of Elgin's Land Division Committee as a surplus farm dwelling severance. Surrounding land uses include rural residential and agricultural uses to the east and west, the St. Thomas Municipal Airport to the southeast, and the Canadian National CN rail line to the north of the property. Next slide, please. The official plan designates the subject lands as hamlets in part and agricultural in part on Schedule A land use plan for the municipality of Central Elgin. The subject lands are zoned open space OS1 in the Township of Yarmouth zoning bylaw 1998 as amended. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the severance was granted by the committee with the condition that the lands be rezoned to maintain compliance with the requirements of the official plan and the zoning bylaw, as well as the provincial planning statement. Provincial legislation, as well as the municipality's official plan, require that any surplus farm dwelling severances, the farmland that is retained shall be rezoned to prohibit any future residential development on those lands, as they must continue to remain in agricultural use. So the lands are proposed to be retained to prohibit any new residential dwellings on the now vacant farm parcel. As such, the rezoning will facilitate the creation of lots by fulfilling this condition that's placed on the severance with tonight's zoning application. Next slide, please. So through the review and public notice requirements, no comments or letters of concern were received from members of the public or any external or internal agency or stakeholder. Staff, as a recommendation, as this is the statutory public meeting for this zoning bylaw amendment, staff will subsequently report back to council with a final recommendation on the proposed zoning amendment, as well as the draft zoning bylaw for consideration. At this time, staff are generally satisfied that the application is consistent with the provincial planning statement, the County of Elgin, and the Municipality of Central Elgin official plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Andrews. Doesn't sound like we've received submissions, but I will ask the clerk just for a double check.
Confirming, Mr. Mayor, that no correspondence was received.
My thanks. The floor is now open from questions from members of council. Any members of the public wish to speak to this virtually or in the gallery?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my name is Tracy Peelan-Abbs. I am the land use planning consultant for the applicant. Happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Ms. Peelan-Abbs. I think you and I have met once before.
Yes.
Welcome and thank you very much. We appreciate this, but I don't see any questions, so I think we're going to move along with your okay.
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for your work on this file. Everyone has been provided a fair opportunity to be heard. Any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should contact the municipality. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council. This public meeting is adjourned at 6:18. Thank you.
May I call a quick point of order?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Just before we continue, I want to point out that Councillor Bachman is online, so I believe we have failed to do a called vote the last couple of times to include him. And our procedure says that if we did it wrong and nobody called it out, we can move forward and not go and redo the whole business, but we should start including him going forward.
Very good. Appreciate that, Councillor Griffin. So we will, on the next one here, 216 Centennial Avenue. It's a public meeting is required by the Planning Act to afford any person an opportunity to make representation with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 216 Centennial Avenue. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning the proposal? Seeing none. Ms. Leach, what method of notice and when was the notice given to the public for the meeting, please?
Mr. Mayor, as per requirements of the Planning Act, notice was mailed by regular post to every owner of land within 120 meters of the subject land and applicable agencies on March 24th, 2026. Notice was also physically posted to the property by municipal staff and posted to the municipal website.
Thank you. Mr. Andrews, you're here to explain again, so go forward, sir.
Mayor Sloan and members of council, we do have a presentation that'll be up momentarily for this application. Great. Thank you. So the second public statutory meeting for zoning amendments tonight is 216 Centennial Avenue, located as well in the former township of Yarmouth. Next slide, please. Sorry, previous slide. No, previous. There we go. So these subject lands are known municipally as 216 Centennial Avenue and are located on the east side of Centennial Avenue and to the south of Lawton Street. The development lands are approximately just over half a hectare or about 1.6 acres in size with a lot frontage of approximately 12 meters or 39 feet. The retained lands, which are not included with the future application, which includes a single detached dwelling and accessory structure on it, is approximately 0.14 hectares or 0.35 acres in area with lot frontage of about 28.2 meters or 92.5 feet. The surrounding lands are primarily low-density residential development in the form of single detached dwellings. Next slide, please. The official plan designates the subject lands as residential on Schedule D, the Community of Eastwood Land Use Plan in the Central Elgin's official plan. These subject lands are zoned Residential Zone 1 or R1 in part and Open Space Zone 2, OS2 in the Township of Yarmouth zoning bylaw number 1998 as amended. Next slide, please. So tonight, the proposal we have today is to develop a vacant land condominium comprising of 8 ground-oriented residential dwelling units for future single detached dwellings. The existing home, as I mentioned, is not to be included and will be separated from the subject lands through future Planning Act applications. The zoning bylaw amendment tonight is to rezone a portion of those lands from OS2 to R1, together with the introduction of site-specific zoning provisions to address reduced lot area frontage and setback requirements for the development portion. The retained lands that contains the existing dwelling and the accessory structure will be zoned strictly R1 without any site-specific provisions at this time. The associated draft plan of condominium has been sent in to the County of Elgin and is concurrently under review, which is to facilitate the development of those 8 condominium units. Now, as the Planning Act does have the county as the delegated approval authority, that application sits with the county and the municipality will have an opportunity to provide any conditions as well as the agreements that will be endorsed by council at a future meeting. Next slide, please. So the proposal specifically is to rezone the subject lands, we'll call part 1 the development lands from R1 and open space 2 to a residential zone 1 with site-specific provisions, as I mentioned, to address reduced lot area to 427 square meters, a lot frontage of 11.4 meters, as well as the overall portion that abuts a public road along Centennial, which will be used as the common element access point to the condominium of 12 meters, and a reduction of the minimum front yard for each condominium unit to 6 meters in the R1 zone. Next slide, please. So during the review and circulation, at the time of the writing of the report, we didn't have any submissions. However, at the time this presentation was done, staff had received 2 letters of opposition. These comments that were analyzed in these letters spoke to four main themes, which are inadequate setbacks and compatibility, potential unsafe access to the parcel, drainage and servicing deficiencies, as well as uncoordinated and precedent-setting spot development. At this time, staff do not have a recommendation on the zoning and will report back to council with a final recommendation following the statutory public meeting tonight. However, at this time, staff are confident that the application is generally consistent with the PPS, the County of Elgin official plan, and the Municipality of Central Elgin's official plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Ms. Leach, sounds like you might have received written submissions on the proposal, please.
Mr. Mayor, correspondence was received from CJDL on behalf of client Doug Terry Limited with no objection and they provided comment on the preliminary site concept drawings and integration with the neighboring property. Also from Southwestern Public Health indicating no objection. From Jennifer Bloom with concerns related to compatibility and setback, traffic, private road and safety, connectivity of development, infrastructure and stormwater management, and the prematurity of the application. And from Gary Zacher at 212 Centennial Avenue with concerns regarding the negligible setback, high conflict exit at Centennial Road, drainage, the isolation of the proposed development, precedent setting, and economic impacts to neighboring property values.
Thank you. Any questions from members of council? Floor is now open for, I apologize. Councillor Graham, please.
Hi, how are you? So basically, they're proposing to put 8 units behind single dwelling units and put a road in there? Is that the idea? And then just plopping down 8 units?
Through the chair, so the plan is to have it as a private road. So it'll be a private condominium road that'd be accessed from the public road Centennial. So it won't be a municipal road. It'll be a privately maintained and operated condominium road through the corporation, the condominium corporation that'll be formed in the future.
And through the chair. And so from a planning perspective, you don't see anything that is kind of a red flag that there's going to be 8 units behind Centennial Ave that has just like large lots, and it doesn't seem to fit with the surrounding area is what I'm saying. And I'm sure, you know, if the residents were probably more aware of it, they would probably agree.
Through the chair, so it is a modest infill development. So we recognize that there is historic, single detached dwellings on larger lots there, of course. The 8 units, as I mentioned, it's an infill development, so it is a bit of a smaller project. Now, it's not unusual to see these condominium type developments, pop up where they have access to public roads. There is servicing. I mean, in terms of red flags, it does check the boxes in terms of meeting legislation, county and municipal policies. We do recognize that there are some deficiencies that still need to be worked out in terms of their stormwater and a few other items of access and how that's going to work. At this time, that's why we will be recommending that a holding provision be placed on the zoning to address any outstanding items such as traffic, pedestrian issues, stormwater management, and all the servicing. Right now, we're just looking at the land use in principle, and those other items can be addressed through the detailed design through the condo process.
And just 2 other questions. So, and I'm sure it's through site plan and everything, but are we requiring them, if it passes, are we requiring them to put a sidewalk there? Is the land behind it up for development as well? Or is that staying agricultural?
So through the chair, so the provision of sidewalks, so will be private. So there's some level of flexibility to provide that pedestrian-oriented development through the condo and site plan process. The adjacent parcel, we don't have, at least the municipality doesn't have anything official yet in terms of applications. There is discussion of potential development, but there is nothing official that has come as an application at this time.
Okay, any questions from members of the public that are in the audience this evening? Please come forward. I'll have you state your name.
Yeah, sir.
Okay, one question. So do you want to speak to it, sir? I'll take names here. We've got the applicant, and we'll start with you, Jennifer. Please come forward. Okay, thank you. Please, name, please.
Jennifer Bloom.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Sloan and members of council. As I stated, my name is Jennifer Bloom, and I'm appearing this evening on behalf of my parents, Gary and Carol Zacher, who reside at 212 Centennial Ave, immediately adjacent to the proposed development. It might be helpful while I do my written submission if there's any opportunity to put the parcel plan up on the screen just for reference, but I think it bears some weight that condominiums is exactly what we're talking about tonight and not single residential units that are going behind. So while we support the provincial mandate for housing intensification, we are here to oppose the zoning bylaw amendment for 216 Centennial in its current form. The proposal is premature and represents a fragmented development, as is demonstrated by the spot zoning, essentially what we're being asked to approve here with an H holding provision. This does not align with the Central Elgin official plan regarding land use compatibility and community safety. Regarding compatibility and setback, our primary concern as the adjacent neighbors is the proposed 1.2 meter side yard setback. I believe in the written submissions presented to council in your package, you'll see some photographs that were taken of 212 Centennial Ave, with a ladder that extends into what would be the private road with approximately a 45 to 60 vehicle traffic in and out, trying to access our eaves troughs. We have a fence proposed that goes directly underneath our eaves troughs on this development. This is a drastic reduction from standard residential transitions and creates what's essentially a canyon effect. This narrow gap leaves no room for meaningful landscaping, acoustic buffering, or visual screening. Furthermore, it creates a significant maintenance hazard for my parents at 212 Centennial Ave. There is insufficient space for snow storage. Windrows of snow clearing that private road with, again, 45 to 60 vehicles a day going in and out would actually push up against this fence, which is directly against their residence. If that fence happens to fall over or there's damage, we'd now have to deal with a condominium group instead of a single residential owner of the property. There's also a direct risk of the foundation integrity at 212 Centennial Ave with the vibrations from traffic going in and out. Traffic data provided for this applicant, in my opinion, is obsolete. It was done prior to Centennial Ave being determined as a major arterial road servicing the Volkswagen plant. I'm sure this council is aware of the Highway 3 twinning and the proposed roundabout at the end of Centennial, which is approximately 1 kilometer away from this property. This property sits in the middle of Centennial at the crest of a hill. That's where your blind road would be exiting. Currently, that side of the road, the east side, does not have any sidewalks connecting to anywhere, and this site plan does not contain any boulevard or even space for pedestrian travel. They'd have to walk up and down the road and then cross a very busy Centennial Ave. Infrastructure. The proposal is landlocked. It's an island. It turns its back on what is proposed to be a Terry development to the east. So it's essentially a condominium, and that Terry development has not, from what I'm hearing, been approved or made it to that point. So it's an agricultural land right now. But if that was to be approved and these condominiums were turned the other way, they could join into what is a well-planned, well-coordinated subdivision property. I believe that this property was originally approached by Terry Subdivision to become part of that. By forcing all of the drainage and traffic onto Centennial Ave, the development ignores the official plan's goal for logical, integrated growth. The stormwater drainage is incomplete. It has not been peer reviewed. It is relying on ditches and swales going into the McNay Drain. I'm a layperson, but from my initial search on the internet, McNay Drain has been cited in many other developments as being at capacity, designed and outdated for agriculture runoff, not a condominium proposal. The McNay Drain it's situated at the corner of 212 Centennial Ave and would not handle significant increased runoff. Also, replacing permeable soil with impervious surfaces, 34% in this case, because we're really compacting and maximizing. We don't just want some condominiums. We would also like to have a single residential unit that exits out onto the curve of that private road. So in conclusion, I would urge all council members and planning department to please review our written submissions. I have a further PowerPoint presentation that I knew I wouldn't have time to share this evening that the clerk has offered to forward to council. We respectfully request the council defer approval until a comprehensive peer-reviewed traffic study that is current and reflects the growth that we are seeing in Central Elgin and a stormwater management plan are completed and peer-reviewed. We urge you to require a redesign or at least a reconsideration of the condominium layout that integrates with the proposed subdivision. And we absolutely request that our property at 212 Centennial Ave has enough setback to give us some relief from 45 to 60 vehicles going in and out. We are an agricultural property, and my parents are being asked to bear the brunt of a condominium development. Our loss is their gain, and we're just asking to be considered in this. There are options that still achieves what this development is proposing, but it would require integrating with that subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation. And I think there's someone else that's going to speak. Okay, sir. So is there anyone else from the gallery that wishes to speak? Sir, do you want to come ahead, please?
Gary's. Go ahead, Gary.
Okay. Sorry, just because we're looking at time, is there anything extra that your daughter didn't put forward in that excellent presentation?
It is excellent. I've got a lot of respect for Jennifer's presentation. I'm not going to go back through what I have here. I had a speech prepared. I've sent you documents that stand to help you understand me. I'm a retired conservation officer. I worked in this area for 43 years. I've taken law cases through the Ontario Supreme Court, all dealing with habitat loss and habitat encroachment. This meeting here scares the crap out of me, so I'm nervous about it.
So just so I can say about the scared, this is our opportunity to hear from the public.
Right.
Okay, so we're not voting on anything. This is our opportunity. It shouldn't scare because we're getting your point of view across. So at the end of the day, the council wants to hear, and then they report back, and Mr. Andrews goes over all the submissions. So don't be scared. We're happy to hear from you.
The submission I've sent in has a photo. This is the photo here. I've sent this in just to try and explain, I'm not asking for a king's ransom in this process. I'm asking for some buffer zone to be provided in the plan in order to assure that I don't get damage to my property and my property value doesn't plummet as far as I think it's going at the moment. It's all laid out in a more dignified manner, so I'm not going to dwell on it, but I would ask that you take a look at it. I'll explain that the proposal that I've seen shows that they're allowing a 2.3 setback to side properties in the development. But when it comes up to my property, there's a 0 setback. There's none, which shows me that I can't trust that it's going to be respected. I have a greenhouse that's situated, and unfortunately it's touching the property line. It's not over the line, it's not on the line, but it's touching it. I've been asked to move it. That tells me that they're asking to put the fence too close. The road, or the plan that I've been presented shows that the property line will have a privacy fence run the extent of the property line. That will come within less than 6 inches of the foundation of my garage. I can't survive on that. They can't put that fence in and maintain that fence at that type of a structure. So there's a problem here, and I just need people to notice it. That's all. So I'm not going to take any more of your time. I appreciate you hearing my point, and have a good day.
Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate your input. Did the gentleman here
Yeah.
want to come forward and state your name for us, please?
This is on. Thank you. My name's Gerald Lozier, and I live across the street from Gary at 211. My problem might be trivial to most people, but when Gary starts his pickup truck, the lights, the LED lights shine right into my house. I have to change my line of sight so that I'm not blinded. When he pulls up to the road Centennial, the truck is now at an incline, so it's even worse. What I'm worried about is when those people come out of that street, however many there is, if there's 8 condos, it's going to be minimum 16 vehicles, right? We figure most people have 2 vehicles per house. They're all going to be pointing right into my place when they're making a right-hand turn going north on Centennial. I would like, if possible, that this be put on hold with the storm drains, as well as for them to wait till Lawton continues eastward through the farmer's field and that be developed. And they would have access to the back part. They wouldn't have to put that road coming to Centennial. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your input. Is there anyone else in the gallery that wishes to speak to this? Sir, did you want to come forward?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple comments.
Okay, we'll just get you to come up to the mic so the people online can hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship, Mr. Chairman and committee, council and committee. My name is Rick Knutson. I'm a planning consultant, and I've acted to assist Mr. Gratt with his plans for these lands. We've been involved for some time, and this is not something that's just evolved in a short period of time. We've had some levels of frustration in process, and we're just very thankful that you now have Mark and Mohammed here, that we can have we don't have to worry about Kevin and a consultant and then other things. That's not been all that helpful, but we're now online, and I've met with Mark and Mohammed, and I think we're going to be very successful at answering questions as they were coming up. There have been, when the submission went to Mark and Mohammed, I believe there were some 17. This is a page out of a screenshot rather of my computer. 17 submissions that went, including things like the traffic study and the stormwater management study. I'd like to deal with the first to endorse Mark's comments. My planning justification report, which is some 35 pages, I'm not going to bore you with that. In conclusion, this is consistent with the provincial policy statements. It does conform to to the County of Elgin plan, and also conforms to the Central Elgin plan. Both of those must conform to the provincial policy statements. The provincial policy statements, as you're no doubt aware, go further than just encouraging intensification, but they're requiring that we do more with less land. We don't have a full supply, otherwise we use the agricultural land prematurely, which, by the way, is what the Terry lands adjacent are designated, and undoubtedly do have some future plans, but they have quite a number of steps to go through with you before there would be any consideration of those lands developing. We heard about the McNay Drain, and I have a stormwater management study here done by Grit Engineering. Its conclusion was very clear that there's more than sufficient capacity in the McNay Drain from the location of the connection through the Terry lands. We're working with the Terry Group, and have been for some time since the submission that they made to you. Those questions have mostly been now asked and answered in coordination between our engineers, Grid Engineering, and the Cyril de Myers Group in Aylmer. There's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of redesign. Essentially, from a stormwater management point of view, the lands that can be tributary to the Centennial Drive stormwater sewer will be going there. However, grades won't allow some of the rear lands, which is why we're going through an easement from Terry to get to the McNay drain. Staff have reviewed this and have agreed that this is an appropriate splitting of the stormwater. Stormwater itself is being restricted on site so that the post-development flows do not exceed the pre-development flows. So essentially, there's no change in the amount of water that's going now. So the development on site will be retaining that water on site to generally let it go. I like to deal with
And Mr. Newton, we're just cognizant of time, so if you could.
okay, I'll be very as brief as I can, sir.
Thank you.
I'll deal with the last submission first. Yes, there will be about 16 vehicles a day, not the 45 to 60 is submitted by a previous commenter. I believe there are things that we can do to assist in any light shine that might impact the neighbor, and we'll be looking at that'll be one box, and Mark, I'm sure, has made note of that comment. We still have a number. This is one box in a long line of things we have to go through the whole condominium approval process, which zoning and municipal approval is only one element of. As far as I think Gary, his comments I found a little bit disingenuous because I know that Mr. Gratt has met with him, and what we are proposing is that he will have an easement so that he will have access to the eave and that side of his garage. It's very obvious as to where it is. He has not been asked to move anything, nor would he be asked to move anything.
Can you describe that easement?
Yeah, the easement will show up on the condominium plan, and it will be an easement in favor of 212 to the extent that you will be allowed to come down and do remedial repair work on your garage or roof that you need to from that side.
I still have to deal with the fence.
Sir, we can't hear you because it's not going through. So it's not a debate. You're able to put forward information. We have Mr. Andrews here. We have it all taped. All the information will be submitted. You made a comment about the lights and you said you would look into it. This council's heard that.
Yes.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is the opportunity to bring forward information. And as long as we can hear from that microphone, then the folks that are listening at home can hear as well. So thinking about that and the time limits, could we maybe think about?
I appreciate that, sir. Centennial, as you know, is a 50-kilometer-an-hour roadway, whether it's an arterial or whatever. The traffic study that was done by a professional engineer out of London. It has been peer reviewed. And there are no issues with what has been suggested from the engineers. It is not a rear lot development. Oh, sorry, it is not a landlocked development. It is rear lot, and it is an infill development. And I only have a couple more questions.
Which is good because I only have a couple of more minutes.
Okay, great. Again, the traffic numbers, I believe, have been significantly inflated by the presenter. We dealt with the eaves. We will have an easement. The fence has to be maintained by the condominium corporation, and those essentially are my comments, sir. And I leave it in your hands. If councilor committee have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And we'll go through the rest of the process.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we've exhausted, or I think that the council has had their opportunity. Again, this is a public information session. Has everyone in the gallery been heard? You can if you come forward, sir.
My client, Lynn Gratt.
Yeah, I'm the homeowner, 216 Centennial. Again, just kind of I don't think Rick got to go through everything I want to say, but I know I have talked extensively with Gary about this and very open that we're wanting to work together as far as maintenance. We're kind of trying to appease that as well as we can. As far as like impacting its foundation, stormwater management, everything has been taken into account. Swaling, we not only exceed the stormwater management program from a 100-year storm to 250-year storm, like we're able to capture and maintain that. And I feel like we're trying to do everything we can to make this project feasible and not impact the neighboring neighborhood. So.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I'm going to rule that everyone's been provided a fair opportunity to be heard. Any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the passing of a bylaw on the proposed amendment should contact the municipality. Any amendment to the bylaw will be considered at a future meeting of council. This public meeting is adjourned at 6:51. Meeting to consider an engineer's report, the Hammond Drain. This is a meeting required by the Drainage Act to afford any affected landowner an opportunity to make representation with respect to the final engineer's report for the Hammond Drain. A meeting for the Court of Revision regarding assessment will be scheduled at a later date, and notice will be mailed to the owner of every property that has been assessed into the subject drain. Does any member of council have a disclosure of interest concerning the proposal? Seeing none, Mr. Curtis McIntyre will be here to provide an interview. Mr. McIntyre, the microphone seems to be on.
Just wait for a moment as people move out. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm Curtis McIntyre, and I'm pleased to be here to present K-Smart Associates report on the Hammond Drain 3K leasing minor improvement. This report for the Hammond Drain was initiated earlier this year under a relatively new section of the Drainage Act referred to as Section 78.5, more commonly referred to as the minor improvement project. I believe the superintendent for the municipality, Mr. Sean Waterman, mentioned that the municipality of Central Elgin may have had a couple of these minor improvements before, but just so that everyone is aware, the minor improvement part of the Drainage Act in recent update had been separated out so that simpler projects that occur on one property could be isolated out from major improvements and done easier. So that's kind of sped up the process and made things simpler. In the case of this project, Mr. Karn of 3K Leasing is looking to relocate a section of the Hammond Drain on his property, 4489-2 Highway 3, which is directly across the road from the St. Thomas Airport. He wants to relocate the drain to the west edge of his property to facilitate construction of new agricultural structures on the property. The drawing up on the screen, you can see the Hammond Drain. Was last improved in 1987. It crosses the highway as a 16-inch diameter, that's 400 millimeter diameter concrete tile, and dissects the property heading to the northwest. Basically, to the north is on the right side of the page of this drawing. So after being appointed to the project and holding a site meeting for a minor improvement project, there are 7 criteria that an engineer must satisfy or agree are satisfied for the project to move ahead. In this report, I confirm those criteria are met, but just quickly to summarize, the activity takes place on an individual property. Costs associated with the project shall be paid for by the initiating owner. Work can be completed on that property, and the activity proposed will not change the way in which the drain is maintained or repaired, and also does not change the capacity of the system. So those are the criteria that we have to satisfy. And they are in this case. Most items are easily checked off. The one that requires some engineering consideration is the capacity. The existing Hammond Drain, as mentioned, is a 16-inch diameter tile that has a capacity of 182 liters per second as it goes through the property. Since we're proposing to relocate it to the edge of the property lines, you add length, therefore you reduce the grade of the drain. So in order to maintain that same capacity, we're proposing an 18-inch diameter pipe going from the existing drain to the west edge of the boundary, and then up to the north to join back in as it leaves the property. So yeah, in order to address the request, this report proposes the following minor improvements to the Hammond Drain. Supply and installation of 224 meters of 450 diameter solid plastic pipe. Supply and installation of two 1,200 millimeter diameter manholes and one 900 by 1,200, that's 3 foot by 4 foot diameter, a 3 foot by 4 foot dimension of a catch basin. And then abandon approximately 192 meters of existing 16-inch concrete tile that goes across the property, which will be removed by the owner. If we can switch down to the last page of the PDF, there's one more page down. There we go. This is the estimate for the cost of construction and total cost of the project. So estimate for the cost of construction is just under $100,000. Total engineering estimate, including the report, meetings, estimated cost for construction supervision is approximately $5,000 for a total project costs, including non-refundable HST of $117,000. And again, all the costs for a minor improvement project are assessed to the owner initiating the project. That's all I have to present on the Hammond Drain minor improvement. I'd be happy to field any questions from council and the owner.
Thank you very much, Mr. McIntyre. Ms. Leach, any appeals to the proposed drainage project, please?
Mayor Sloan, I've not received any appeals.
Questions from council? Questions from the public, online or in the gallery, please? Seeing none, everyone has been given a fair opportunity to express their views regarding the engineer's report. If there are no further questions, please be advised that any person wishing further information on the actions of council regarding the Hammond Drain should email or contact the municipality. This meeting is adjourned at 6:57. We'll have a 5-minute recess. Sorry, we have a building fee. Sorry, who have I got up for building? But that one's not on. Jim, is Jim here? Oh, okay, thank you. To see Mr. Fluid. Welcome, Mr. Fluid. Okay, I'm going to see if Mr. Bruziz is online. Can you hear me, sir?
Can you hear me now?
We can, sir. Welcome. If you could, we're welcoming. We've welcomed you, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, members of council. I believe the clerk is calling up the presentation, and I'll be reviewing the building permit fees. Thank you. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so what I'd like to cover off this evening is review the scope of the project, review the findings and recommendations that we've made on the project, and show some benchmarking. We did some benchmarking with surrounding municipalities based on the existing and proposed fees, and show you the results of that. Next slide, please. So the review, as you're all aware, building services are delivered through enterprise fund, which means it's 100%. The expenditures are covered from permit fee revenues, so there's no taxation involved. So the review, we evaluated the changes in construction volumes that are taking place, the permit complexity and regulatory requirements, and all of these things have increased pressure on the financial sustainability of the operations. We also evaluated whether existing permit fees accurately reflect the current projected cost. And one of the things that is very important is to maintain a building permit fee reserve fund to buffer against revenue volatility, and we assess the adequacy of that. And as I say, we benchmark the fees against comparable municipalities to support competitiveness, fairness, and reasonableness. Next slide, please. So the strategic objectives that we, the strategic objectives that we employed is to ensure cost recovery and financial sustainability, transparency and accountability, making sure that applicants were easily aware of the fees and the charges, meet all the statutory requirements, equity and fairness, making sure that all types of permit fees were equitable across all applications, and competitive and defensible. Next slide, please. So we looked at the trends with regard to building permits, the number of permits. You can see that the number of permits reached their peak in 2021. There's 504 permits. And then since then, they reduced in 2025, there was 256 permits. So there has been fewer permits. However, when we analyzed the projects, what we found is that even though there was less permits, the degree of effort was greater because the permits were larger and more complex, in many instances. Next slide, please. So we also looked at the construction value, and the average annual construction value is about 84 million from 2020 to 2025. It peaked in 2021 at about 109 million, and thereafter it's a slight decline to about 71 million in 2025. So the typical mix prior to 2024 was 75% residential and 25% non-residential. But you can see from 24 to 25, that mix has shifted. It's now 56 non-residential, which again are more complex fees, and requires increased inspection effort. Next slide, please. So one of the important things is to ensure that there's adequate building permit reserve funds. These reserve funds are used to stabilize revenues. As you saw in the previous slide, the revenues across the different years are very volatile, and the reserve fund is used to smooth that volatility. The reserves have decreased since a high of in 2022 of 795,000 to about 626,000 in 2025. Next slide, please. So in terms of leading practices, what municipalities try to do is to maintain building permit reserve balances as a percentage of gross expenditures at a target rate of 150%. And you can see from this slide here that your reserves as a percentage of gross expenditures was 147% in 2022, and that's subsequently reduced to currently in 2025 about 121% of gross expenditures. So you're slightly below the recommended target range that leading municipalities use as their metric. Next slide, please. So in terms of the calculation of the fees, we employed an activity-based costing approach. We identified the full cost of service. That includes all the direct costs and indirect costs that are associated with the permit fee. We did a process mapping exercise in conjunction with staff and developed time estimates based on average effort for different types of applications. We calculated fully burdened hourly rate for each staff member. Essentially, that's the salaries and wages of the staff plus the overhead for indirect costs. And then finally, we developed a financial model to allocate these costs across permit categories based on the process map. Next slide, please. So the outcome with regard to the fees, what we identified is some new categories we introduced for fees. Things like retaining walls, signs, re-inspections, and changes of use to ensure consistent costing and charging for these types of applications. Also, several of the minimum fees that are currently in the fee bylaw, we removed. What we found is that they were charging small projects over the actual cost of the effort required by the building services, so that we remove these fees to support affordability for these smaller projects. And then what that does is it reduces the cross-subsidization between permit fees. So in effect, large or small permits rather, were subsidizing larger permits. Next slide, please. So as I say, we did a benchmarking with some of the surrounding municipalities, some municipalities in Elgin, Middlesex, Oxford County, Chatham, and Norfolk County. And what we did is we considered both residential and non-residential permit categories. And what we found is the fees are comparable or in some cases slightly higher, but that was justified by the full cost recovery approach that I explained earlier and the need to maintain a sustainable reserve fund. In essence, there was no significant outliers that were identified. So that suggests that the proposed fees are reasonable and are not likely to deter development. Next slide, please. So this is the results of the benchmarking. So the first classification is assembly properties. And what we found is looking at the Central Elgin, the yellow, in comparison to the other municipalities, you're currently just slightly above the median. And based on the process mapping exercise and the cost allocation, that moves up assembly occupancies to just over the average. And again, these are more complex type applications which require a greater degree of effort. Next slide. Institutional occupancies, same situation. You were currently around just above the median, and now you're just above the average. Next slide. Residential properties. You can see that there's just been a slight increase in the residential properties. On this analysis, what we did is we used the property sample size of 1,668 square foot. And then based on that, the increase resulted in a $108 increase. Next slide. Mercantile properties, permits rather, again, they're more complex, so there's an increase in these types. Next slide. And the mercantile occupancy is the same. There was an increase in these more complex type projects. Industrial properties, you can see industrial properties, they're less complex. So there's actually what we're proposing is a reduction in what you're charging currently for industrial occupancies. So you can see that you were quite high in comparison to the other municipalities. And based on the recommended user fee, it's around average now. Next slide. And the same situation in farm buildings. It was a slight reduction in the farm buildings, the charge to farm buildings. You can see that your existing, it was at the average. Now you're just slightly below the average. Next slide, please. So what we're recommending is to adopt the proposed 2026 building permit fees as outlined in Appendix A of the report. You implement an annual indexing of the fees to the Consumer Price Index. Again, that's to avoid future cost recovery gaps, and formally establish a policy whereby a target balance for building reserve fund be maintained at approximately 150% of gross operating costs. So again, these recommendations support financial sustainability, regulatory compliance, and predictable, transparent service delivery. And that's the end of the presentation, Your Worship, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bruzas. I have a question. When were if you're doing the comparators and you're showing our old number versus the new number, first of all, when were these rates last updated? And secondly, when have the other jurisdictions' rates been updated?
That's a good point. Most of the other municipalities, I don't have exactly which municipalities, most of the other municipalities haven't updated the fees in a number of years. And again, what we're seeing, we do a lot of these studies, what we're seeing is in a lot of these municipalities, the current revenues are not sustaining the operations. And I think what you're likely to see over the course of the year or two is large increases in the other municipalities. In terms of your fees, I believe they were indexed last year, but a comprehensive review hasn't been undertaken in a number of years.
Okay, I thought so. Thank you. Questions? Councillor Griffin, please.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. When I was reading this, one of the things that I saw and appreciated was that you've got these simplified equations for the costs for different things, where instead of being so much plus this much per square meter or whatever. And I liked those, but I wondered, how did you decide what the appropriate sort of middle line was there? And are there certain sizes of permitting that will benefit more than other ones?
So what we did in the various property type categories is we, based on the process mapping, we calculated a square footage charge for the municipalities that have square footages. There are other permit fees that are a base charge because it's things like building a deck or a porch. So based on the leading practice of other municipalities is just to have a standard per square foot charge, which we've recommended here. Again, what it does is it makes it more transparent to the user and easy for the user to calculate the fees. And the result of that, in a lot of cases, as I mentioned, your minimum fees were quite high. And when you get into some of these smaller projects, the user was in effect paying higher than what we calculated the recommended fee.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone in the gallery online that wishes to ask a question of Mr. Bruzas? Sir, come to the microphone if you could state your name, please. Need the mic.
There we go. Good evening, Your Worship. David Wasmsdorf. I'm the Director of Development for Doug Terry Limited. I happen to be here tonight for other matters, and I thought in the context of our longstanding work in the community, particularly at Eagle Ridge, I thought I'd provide a little bit of context. I would say Doug Terry Limited is in favor of this fee increase in the context of trying to get to cost recovery. And we think that that's important not only for the municipality, but to ensure that the services that a home builder requires on a regular basis are covered off. I think the biggest concern we have is around governance, and it would be that the report speaks to the past and not to the future. And our concern would be that there's no governance in place with the new bylaw that would allow council to request of staff to revisit either indexing, or once the municipality gets to 150% of budget, that there's a way in which council can be directing staff to revisit, possibly stop indexing, and look at other ways in which to deal with fee increases. So I'm wondering whether or not that is something that's been considered or could be considered at a later date. So we don't want to see this slow down. We understand the need for the municipality to recover costs, but there might be some other things that need to be considered.
Thank you very much. Mr. McLeod, do you want to take this?
Sure. So as part of the annual budgeting process, the Director of Finance would provide council with a listing of all of the reserve funds. So there would be an ongoing annual check to make sure that that fund is meeting its target goals. And if council does see that it is exceeding it, then they would look at it at that time. But there's no prescribed mechanism on an annual basis other than the annual check at budget time.
Thank you for the comments, and we appreciate your endeavors in Central Elgin. And Mr. Bruzes,
Yes.
seeing no further questions, I don't see any. Deputy Mayor has a question. Go ahead, please.
To you, Mayor, my question is, like, building has gone down, so then obviously the money that comes into that fund is lower. As building increases, how is that, we're going to adjust that costing? Because we'll get to a point where our income will be higher than our cost ideally until we get to a point where we need to hire more people to inspect more buildings.
Sir, if you want to comment, please.
Yeah, through you. Yes, what we did is a process mapping exercise. So we calculated the degree of effort for the plans examination and inspection process for each of the application types. And then we did a costing based on that, including all the direct and indirect costs. So the activity levels, they vary, as you saw, they're volatile, and the purpose of the reserve is to smooth that volatility. So it's not, our calculation is not based on activity levels, it's based on the degree of effort as outlined in the process maps. So if activities levels do increase, it would potentially generate more revenues, but also potentially require more resources to account for the extra activity.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I think that concludes the questions. We appreciate the presentation and thank you for your work. On that note, before we start the regular meeting, I'm going to ask consideration for a 5-minute recess. Thank you. Back. Now, those who are just joining us, we're starting the regular meeting of the municipality of Central Elgin. If I could ask those that are in the gallery to join with us and rise for the national anthem. Thank you.
Our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, a true North, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Municipality of Central Elgin acknowledges that it is located on the land of the McKee Treaty that was signed by the Wyandot and Anishinaabe nations, including ancestors of Chippewas of the Thames First Nation. It is also the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Attawandaronk, and Mississauga Nation. These First Nations continue to provide ongoing stewardship of the land and waters in the municipality of Central Elgin. Council, any disclosures of pecuniary interest, please? Seeing none, if I could get a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the minutes. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Watson.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Watson, the minutes for the special meeting of council dated March 2nd, 2026, regular meeting of council dated March 9th, 2026, and special meeting of council dated March 23rd, 2026 be adopted.
Questions or comments on the minutes, please? Seeing none. All those in favor on the adoption? Oh, sorry. Yes. Thanks, colleagues. Calling the vote on the adoption of the minutes. All those in favor, Ms. Leach?
Oh, we have a show of hands from Councillor Bogman there.
Great. Thank you. I want to make sure we do this right. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Our first delegation this evening is the former hospital lands feasibility report, staff report DPE 2426. I'd like to welcome Jeff Paul, who is the managing principal of urban development from Stantec, to provide the presentation. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. So I'm here tonight to present the feasibility study for the hospital lands. This represents a culmination of an extensive amount of study and work that we undertook with Central Elgin engineering staff, and very pleased to present the results tonight. Next slide, please. So our study really looked at the water and wastewater servicing for the hospital lands and the feasibility of providing water and wastewater servicing. We based our study on some concept plans, which I believe you'll see some detail on later. We're looking at a full build-out population for the hospital lands of approximately 7,000 people. Next slide. And as part of the study, in terms of looking at that full build-out of 7,000 people, we also looked at the growth projections and how the hospital lands would develop over the course of time. So Watson Associates was retained by Central Elgin to provide growth projections for that 25-year time frame. You'll see that in this chart, here's lots of numbers on this one, but what we did look at, and you'll hear me come back to this, is we looked at a bit more of a holistic approach to servicing for the hospital land. So Taking a step back, and when you sort of look at the map and the geography, you realize that you've got the hospital lands, you've got your settlement area of Union, and you also have the obviously Port Stanley and some growth in Port Stanley. And each community is relatively close to each other. So a lot of our study work did look more holistically at the servicing of the hospital lands, how that interrelated to those other growth communities, and whether there was opportunities to share servicing across the communities. So this slide really does represent the growth in all three communities. So what you're seeing here is growth in residential units for the hospital lands across the top couple of lines. What you really see here in terms of the 25-year forecast is that at the 25-year point, so we're looking at 2051 at that point, the growth projections for the hospital lands is about 6,800 people. If you remember previously, the slide before said that the full build out was about 7,000 people. So essentially the hospital lands are projected to fully build out in approximately a 25-year time frame. And then, of course, we have growth projections for Union, because, of course, there's growth interest in Union, and, of course, ongoing growth in Port Stanley. So 25-year forecast for each of those communities being roughly 2,800 people for Union in the 25-year time frame, and about 2,300 people in Port Stanley in that 25-year time frame. Next slide. So as we look at the water and wastewater servicing strategy for the hospital lands, we go through basically a three-step process. We're looking first at the existing conditions, so doing an inventory of what servicing do you have available to you, and what are your existing conditions and your existing infrastructure. Then we look at alternatives, and then we go through those alternatives and come to a preferred alternative. So this first slide here, we're talking about water servicing first off. This first slide, again, we're sort of zooming out and looking at the bigger picture here. You're seeing the hospital lands on the north edge of the map, just below St. Thomas, looking at obviously Union in the middle and Port Stanley at the south end. And lots of colors on this slide here. So of course, the hospital lands is what you see outlined in red. That was our study area, so just off the south end of St. Thomas. The cyan line, it's a little hard to make out, but running up to the east, running north-south, that is the Elgin area primary water supply system. So that is the line that the regional water supply operates, brings water out of Lake Erie, and is the water supply for all of the communities in this area, including Port Stanley, St. Thomas, and the southern parts of London. So that line runs just east of the study area on Centennial. Of course, we have all the water mains and distribution system within the city of St. Thomas. That's in the purple color. And then, of course, we have the water mains that service the communities in central Elgin. So we have a connection to the Elgin area primary water line on Dexter Line. So that's how Port Stanley and Union receive their water. So that connection is on Dexter Line. Brings water into Port Stanley, and then from Port Stanley north to Union, the water system for Central Elgin extends to the north end of Union and no further. Yeah, and that's essentially your existing conditions, or what you have to work with in terms of water connections. Next slide. So what we have here is, again, we're looking at alternatives now. So as we work our way through the study, we looked at various alternatives, looked at what it would, how those alternatives service the hospital lands, and then of course the merits, particularly in terms of cost of those various alternatives. So option one was to service the hospital lands strictly off of St. Thomas. So we do have a couple of connections that are available to us. We have the development immediately to the north of the hospital lands, and we have a water main there on the stub end of Benjamin Parkway that's been sized to be extended into the hospital lands. We also have an existing water main here on Sunset Drive that can be connected to as well. So this option obviously presents a very quick and easy alternative in terms of providing water supply to the hospital lands. Represents very minimal infrastructure costs. So you're really just extending those water mains into the development of the hospital lands. There is some oversizing cost associated with the water main on Benjamin Parkway. It was obviously oversized for the hospital land, so there is some cost recovery that Central Elgin would have to compensate the developer for. And then the last thing, what you see at the chart at the bottom here is just looking at the operational costs. So obviously our study, we look at the capital cost, but we're looking at the operation of the system as well. And you'll hear me come back to this a couple of times. There is a difference in operational cost between purchasing water or getting water servicing through St. Thomas versus getting water servicing through the Elgin area primary system, which you'll hear me talk about in some of the other alternatives. So it's not exactly apples and apples, because essentially when you're buying water from St. Thomas is taking it from the Elgin area system. They're boosting the pressure, they're providing water storage, and then they're sending it to Central Elgin. So it's a slightly higher rate. If you purchase water directly from the Elgin area system, then you're required to boost that pressure and provide water storage yourselves. What you're seeing basically here in this chart below is that we looked at, again, looking at those growth forecasts and saying, based on those growth forecasts and the amount of water that you would be using for the hospital lands, what are the costs that you would pay either to St. Thomas or to the Elgin area system? What's the difference in that cost, and what does that accumulate to over time? So if you look at, I'll just use the first column as an example. If you're looking at that first 5-year time frame, your yearly cost of the Elgin area system at the end of 5 years, so at the end of 5 years at year 5, you're paying approximately $87,000 to the Elgin area system if you were connected to that system. If you were connected to the St. Thomas system, you would be paying approximately $188,000 in year 5. So the difference between those costs, you're looking at roughly $100,000 at year 5. As growth continues to occur, of course, that annual cost continues to grow. So you'll see across that chart at the 10-year stage, that annual cost at year 10 is $259,000, year 15, $418,000, and so on. So that's growing as growth occurs in the hospital lands. And of course, over the course of time, that difference in cost is accumulating. So at the end of 5 years, that difference in cost is accumulated to $300,000. By the time you get to 25 years, that accumulated cost has grown to almost $9 million. Next slide. So next option that we looked at is, instead of connecting to the St. Thomas supply system, connecting directly to the Elgin area system. So as I mentioned earlier, the Elgin area system has a transmission main, which is just to the east of the site towards Centennial. So it's relatively close to the site. So we would, under this alternative, this involves a little bit more infrastructure work. We would bring a water main down John Wise line across the frontage of the hospital lands. We would also have to, as I mentioned earlier, you have to boost the pressure and you have to provide water storage. So there's a couple of more extensive infrastructure works that you would have to install to implement that option. But that would then supply water to the hospital lands, and you would be disconnected from the St. Thomas system under that alternative. Next slide. And then option 3 is really just a variation on option 2 or an extension of option 2. It's really not mutually exclusive. But this is an interesting one that we explored, in that if you implemented option 2, you've now got a separate water system connecting to the Elgin area system that's supplying your hospital lands, but it's separate from your system that is currently servicing Port Stanley and Union. So option 3 really explores the possibility of what if you interconnected them, because of course the north end of Union is not that far away from John Wise line. So this option suggests a future water main connection along Sunset Drive to get to the north end of Union, and then you essentially have one singular system. So you now have a system that is feeding the hospital lands, is feeding Union, and is feeding Port Stanley, and you have 2 different connections to the Elgin area system. You have that existing connection on Dexter line, and you have a new connection on John Wise line. Provides the municipality with a lot of benefits, because it gives you some redundancy in terms of, if something were to happen to the water main on Dexter line and you had to shut it down for repairs, you would not have to shut down water to Port Stanley and Union as a result. You have a redundant connection. You also get a little bit of benefit in Union. We did some modeling in Union. Some of the water pressures in the north end of Union are a little on the low side. It still supports development. The water pressures are a little on the low side. So this connection boosts some of those pressures in the north end of Union. It also gives you the opportunity to share water storage needs. So to speak a little bit about water storage, based on growth, you need a certain amount of storage. You have that in Port Stanley right now. You have a tower that's about 3,000 cubic meters of storage. At some point, your growth projections in Port Stanley will outpace the storage that you need. So you're going to eventually need some more storage in Port Stanley. You don't currently have any storage in Union, and of course you need storage for the hospital lands. By connecting all these systems together, you're able to pool that storage, so to speak, excuse the pun. You're able to put it in one location so that you can service all three communities with your storage needs. So it does present, as I say, an interesting benefit to Central Elgin if you went to that alternative. Next slide, please. So looking at those three alternatives, in some of the study work that we did some modeling. We also had extensive conversations with St. Thomas engineering staff. They ran their water models as well. We were able to determine that the St. Thomas system in its existing state is not able to support the full build out of the hospital lands. We were able to determine that it supports probably about 5 years worth of growth. So first phase of the hospital lands could proceed based on the connection to St. Thomas. But beyond that, some of the water mains in St. Thomas start to experience some capacity issues. So St. Thomas would have to undertake improvements to their water system in order to service the hospital lands beyond that initial phase. There was some preliminary conversations with St. Thomas, the number that they put to that in terms of upgrades to their system in order to service the full build out of the hospital lands. They estimated at approximately $11.5 million to do that work. So again, there's enough capacity in the system in St. Thomas to service the first 5 years worth of growth, but beyond that, you would be incurring some costs that St. Thomas would be implementing to service hospital lands. So in terms of the connection to the Elgin area system, that is a higher capital cost in terms of the alternatives. We're looking at approximately $15.8 million. That is the cost of that water main on John Wise line that I talked about earlier, the booster station that you would have to put in to boost the pressure, as well as the water storage. And then, of course, just touching back on that thought in terms of the option 3, which is that there is a benefit to Central Elgin in terms of redundancy in that system. After taking a look at all the alternatives, our recommendation is really a bit of a hybridization of the options. So what we're recommending is that the initial phase of the hospital lands be developed based on a connection to St. Thomas. So get some of the development moving along and incur that or allow that development to proceed while incurring minimal cost, but at the same time embark on the study work and planning to connect to the Elgin area system so that when you get to that beyond that first phase, that connection is available to you. Next slide. So that was water. So now looking at wastewater. So again, we're zooming out here. We're taking a look at existing conditions. So there's a bit of infrastructure to look at here, basically going north and south essentially. You have an existing connection to the St. Thomas Pollution Control Plant, which is on Sunset Drive to the north of the site. That you're currently sending sanitary flows from the hospital and in this immediate vicinity, this building I think included, to the Karen Street pumping station, just over here, and that's being pumped up Sunset Drive and then through a gravity sewer down Sunset Drive to the St. Thomas plant. So you have that connection available. You also obviously have to the south, you have the community of Port Stanley. There's the Port Stanley wastewater treatment facility, the sewers in Port Stanley, and a series of pumping stations in Port Stanley that you can avail yourself of in terms of wastewater servicing. And then a few other points here just to make is that there are 2 boundary agreements between Central Elgin and St. Thomas in terms of allowing capacity to Central Elgin for wastewater in the St. Thomas system. So there's 2 agreements there. I'll loosely refer to them as the 2005 and the 2024 agreements. Just to note that there are still some ongoing negotiations. I know engineering staff have been extensively back and forth with St. Thomas just about the calculation and just determining the exact capacity under those agreements. Our interpretation, I'll speak to later, is that there is capacity under those boundary agreements. So our findings are based on our opinion in that regard. Next slide. So option 1, very similar to the water system. We're looking at going north to St. Thomas. So connecting to the Karen Street pumping station, just the way it currently is. Connect the sewers to the Karen Street pumping station, send the flows to that pumping station, send those flows north into the St. Thomas system and to the St. Thomas pollution control plant. Again, our interpretation is that the boundary agreements allow sufficient capacity for that to occur. The other works that you would have to implement in order to allow that to occur, you will need to upgrade the Karen Street pumping station. It doesn't have to be done immediately. There is some capacity available, but eventually you'll have to upgrade the Karen Street pumping station. And there are some upgrades in the sewer downstream, particularly through St. Thomas. About 250 meters approximately of sewers that are under capacity and would have to be upgraded. Similar to Karen Street, it doesn't have to be done right away. Can be done in time as growth occurs. And similar to the water system, we also did an operational cost comparison. So very same table, essentially, just different numbers for the wastewater side. Again, you are paying a higher rate on a per cubic meter basis. You're paying a higher operational rate to St. Thomas to treat sewage than you yourselves are experiencing in Central Elgin. That does, similar to the water system, grow over the course of time. So maybe just skipping sort of to the last column there, what you're seeing is that accumulated cost difference that I talked about earlier. So over the course of 25 years, as growth is occurring, and you're seeing that difference in cost between Central Elgin and St. Thomas, treatment of the same amount of flows, that cost does accumulate significantly over the course of 25 years. You're looking at $14 million of cost difference. Next slide. So second option is not to go north to St. Thomas and instead send flows south to your existing Port Stanley wastewater treatment facility. Relatively straightforward in terms of option, but it does involve a significant amount of infrastructure to be constructed. So as you can appreciate, there's a lot of geography between the hospital lands and the north end of Port Stanley. In terms of the works that need to be done, you would need to upgrade the Karen Street pumping station. We did propose that the Union sanitary pumping station would be built as part of this option. The Union pumping station obviously has been previously studied as part of the servicing of Union. You're looking at force main construction to connect all the way through to the Port Stanley facility. There is not capacity in the Port Stanley sewers to support this. So the force main would actually have to go all the way through Port Stanley and all the way to the Port Stanley wastewater treatment facility. And the amount of growth that you're looking at in conjunction with growth that you'd be seeing in Port Stanley and growth you'd be seeing in Union does trigger an expansion of the Port Stanley wastewater treatment plant. All of this obviously seems like a significant amount of work. It doesn't have to happen immediately. It can be phased over the course of time because some of those works do have capacity. We can use some of the existing sewers in Port Stanley for some limited growth, but you're still looking at a fairly substantial initial cost to get development going in the range of approximately $25 million. Next slide. So our option 3 was a little bit of a hybrid of options 1 and 2. So taking advantage of the availability of wastewater treatment in St. Thomas for some of the initial development. And then this option proposes taking those flows that you were sending north. So you do initial phase or two of development, you send that north to the St. Thomas facility, and then you redirect all the flows to the south to the Port Stanley facility. So you're looking at very similar infrastructure requirements as I spoke earlier about option 1 and 2. The advantage to this option is that you've deferred cost. So you've allowed development to occur and not incurred those costs initially. You've deferred that $25 million that I've talked about in the previous slide. You've deferred that, but you really have just pushed it down the road. So your capital cost later on becomes very substantial. And you're also, I'll speak maybe to this in a little bit later slides, you're also paying twice for sanitary treatment. You're paying for it in terms of development charges and paying for it to be treated at the St. Thomas facility. And then if you pull it out of the St. Thomas facility and send it to Port Stanley, you're paying for it there as well. So the costs in this option, even though you've deferred that, become quite substantial over the course of time. Next slide. And then the last option that we looked at was if we were to consider a brand new wastewater treatment facility and what that would look like. Under this alternative, we looked at combining Union and the hospital lands together because, proximity of the two communities suggested that treating the hospital lands by themselves with a brand new facility and continuing to send Union to the Port Stanley wastewater facility was probably not the best option. So this option looked at combining those two communities together and saying, what would it look like if we built a brand new wastewater facility? The location of that is really undetermined, but for sake of putting some ability for us to study it, we looked at a location which is just north and east of Port Stanley. Obviously, we're looking for something that's relatively proximate to Kettle Creek, because that would be our discharge point. So this option essentially essentially proposes works that are similar to what you've seen in option 2. We have Karen Street pumping station upgrades. We've got the Union pumping station, which would be needed, and a force main that would go all the way from the hospital lands to Union, repumped at Union, and brought to that new wastewater treatment facility. It is lower capital cost than sending it all the way through Port Stanley to the Port Stanley facility. But it's still a substantial initial investment because you're building a brand new wastewater facility to take care of these lands. And not to mention the fact that the approval process to do something of that nature is a significant investment of time. Maybe I'll come back to that in the next slide. So as we look at the three alternatives, this is where we kind of sift through them and decide what is the preferred alternative or the one that we're recommending to Central Elgin. So option 2, that was sending all of the flows to the Port Stanley wastewater treatment facility. We did eliminate that because it is a very high initial cost. We talked about that $25 million initial cost earlier, and it's a very high overall cost because we've got an extensive amount of infrastructure that needs to be constructed to connect the two communities. To connect the hospital lands to Port Stanley. Option 4, which was that brand new wastewater treatment facility as an as yet to be determined location. We did eliminate that because of the approval process. You would end up tied up, I think, for an extensive amount of time trying to find the right site, doing the study work associated with that, and I think that would delay the development significantly, as well as the fact that we did go to the exercise of looking at what we could determine were available sites in that area. So we looked at floodplain mapping, we looked at interactions with residential development, just to say, is there land in this area that would be a good location for a wastewater facility? And we were unable to identify a location for that facility. Option 3, which was splitting flows, that was also eliminated because it was a very high overall cost. Did note, though, that this is an option that could be revisited as infrastructure is constructed. So as you see growth occurring, particularly in Union, this picture may start to change. So as Union is developed, the pumping station in Union is constructed, the force main infrastructure is constructed, the dynamics of this option may change with time. But at the end, our recommendation is to pursue option 1, which is sending flows north to St. Thomas. It was selected because it was a lower initial capital cost, significantly lower initial capital cost, as well as a lower overall cost. Next slide. So with all of that comes the price tag for all of this. So we are, I think some of that slide's a little cut off there, but total cost to implement all of this is a mix of capital costs as well as some of that excess operational costs that we talked about earlier. We're looking at $35 million in total for both water and wastewater servicing. And you'll see from the chart that this is essentially costs that are spread out over the course of time. So, you know, what you're seeing at the, the very bottom of the first column in that first 5 years, you're actually looking at a fairly low initial cost. You're looking at $1.2 million of cost for that first 5 years. So that's really a big benefit to the options that we chose, is that you're able to allow that development to occur reasonably quickly because the servicing is in place, but also at a relatively low cost. You see a larger cost in that 5 to 10 year time frame. That's largely associated with now you're constructing that water main connection, you're constructing that booster station, that water storage. That's where a lot of those costs come in. And then as you work your way forward, you're really, those costs that you see in later years is really development charge costs that you're paying to St. Thomas, because as you're connecting sanitary, you're paying a development charge to St. Thomas. But also that excess operational cost over the course of time as well. Next slide. So next steps. All of the projects that you're seeing here are generally exempt under the Class EA process, with the exception of that water booster station and that water storage facility. The water storage in particular triggers a Schedule B class environmental assessment. So we are recommending that municipality undertake a Class EA study to look at that water storage facility. There is obviously still some ongoing discussions with St. Thomas about the boundary agreements, how those flows are calculated, and looking at the capacities. And then, of course, I know that you've got an ongoing development charge study, so these costs being folded into that study to determine development charges for the hospital lands. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm just going to start with a question. The preferred alternative is to convey wastewater flows from the site to the city of St. Thomas by utilizing wastewater capacity provided by the city of St. Thomas through the 2005 and 2024 boundary agreements. Sufficient capacity exists to allow for servicing of the entire site. How is that possible?
It's between the two agreements. So the 2005 agreement, again, this is our interpretation of those agreements. So in the 2005 agreement, it defined, I'll just loosely say, the front third of the property. So from Sunset Drive to approximately 500 meters back from Sunset Drive, there was capacity defined under that 2005 agreement. It spoke to a variety of communities, like that included Lyndale, Ferndale, a few other communities, and provided a capacity number for all of those communities, including that section of the hospital lands. The reports that we looked at determined that of the total capacity that was allowed under that 2005 agreement, Central Elgin does not appear to be using all of that capacity. So there is some excess available for, again, that front part of the hospital lands. And then the 2024 agreement permitted additional capacity, which we feel the remainder of the property can be developed under.
Okay, so when we got the 1,700 in the last round, you're adding that to the initial.
Yes.
Which would come out to about, to carry the one, 4,200, 5,200, I don't know.
So the 2005 agreement, you're
3498, I thought it was.
Yeah, 3298.
3,500.
You're
okay.
using, I think it's about 1,100 right now. So there's roughly 2,000 left over in the 2005 agreement. The calculations that we did for that front part of the property, so again, that sort of 500 meters back from Sunset Drive, I think we figured that it was approximately 600 cubic meters was generated from that portion of the property. So you're generating 600 cubic meters from that portion of the property. You have approximately 2,000 left over from the 2005 agreement.
Okay, so 2,000, and we're going to add the 1,700.
And then you add the 1,700 to that.
Okay, so let's back to the 3,740. Is
Yeah.
that enough for 8,000 houses?
Yes.
It is. Okay, thank you. Colleagues? Wow, you are obviously very thorough and
Okay.
very good in your presentation.
Thank you.
So it was very, very concise, and appreciate your time here tonight. Seeing no further questions, I think we can move forward. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor. Councillor Connors.
Mayor Sloan, the motion for that is moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Connors, that the preferred water and wastewater servicing strategies identified in the hospital lands feasibility study attached to Schedule A to report DBE 2426 be endorsed, and that staff be directed to initiate a request for proposal for the design and construction of key water infrastructure, including a booster pumping station, trunk water main connection to the Elgin area primary supply line, and storage facility estimated at $250,000 to be funded from development charges.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you again, Mr. Paul. Delegation number 2, the official plan amendment, 467 Sunset Drive, the former hospital lands. Staff report CAO 1526. I think I've got Mary Lou Trainer online. Is that correct for the presentation?
That's correct, Mayor Sloan. Can you hear me?
Oh, goodness. There's, yeah, we can all hear you very well. And I think maybe they're going to check on the volume because I think they heard you in Southold. So just one quick moment. Miss Leach, could we work on that, please? Sorry, hold tight for, or one moment, Mary Lou. Miss Leach, we're okay with the volume to proceed?
Yes, sir, that should be better. My apologies all.
That's okay. Mary Lou, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is this better?
Perfect.
Okay. So good evening, Mayor Sloan and members of council. I'm pleased to join you this evening virtually to present the final version of official plan amendment 0126 for the Central Elgin Hospital lands. Next slide, please. Just as a reminder, but given the previous presentation, maybe a reminder isn't needed. The hospital lands are the lands owned by the province of Ontario currently, and they are outlined in red. They exclude the OPP station and they exclude the Southwest Centre for Forensic Mental Health Care. They are owned separately. Next slide, please. The purpose of today's meeting is to provide a number of updates and present the final official plan amendment for adoption. I want to share with you this evening the Phase 2 consultation that was completed. Phase 2 was the official plan amendment process, as well as provide an update on changes arising from the Phase 2 consultation. You also have a report before you this evening recommending adoption of the official plan amendment, and that is co-signed by Mr. McLeod and myself, as we've provided the planning opinion supporting the adoption of the official plan amendment. Next slide, please. We have now finalized the official plan amendment text and mapping based on both public and agency consultation. We have reviewed the agency comments, although they were very minor and did not result in any changes. We did also review the feedback from residents and stakeholders, such as members of the development community, that did result in both mapping and policy changes. And we just want to thank those individuals for sharing their opinions and their thoughts and taking their time to communicate that to us. The official plan amendment is now being brought forward for your adoption, and it will subsequently be submitted to Elgin County for approval as the approval authority. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder of where we've been and how we got to this point in the process, we began in January of 2025 with a vision workshop that we held with council. And we talked about your vision and your principles for developing this community and what it would look like, and importantly as well, what you didn't want to see there. And we looked at precedent images of different communities and had those conversations about priorities and principles. There were 4 principles that came forward: a distinctive community, a livable and affordable community, a connected community, and a sustainable community. And those 4 principles have driven the technical background work that was completed last year. Some of it was completed by Infrastructure Ontario, such as the natural heritage studies, the transportation and servicing studies, augmented by the work of Mr. Paul from Stantec for Central Elgin and on Central Elgin's behalf, as well as other work that was completed, for example, by Watson for Central Elgin. We prepared the policy directions and land use plan that was presented to you in the fall of last year and was the subject of the phase 1 consultation. It did result in revisions to the draft land use plan, as well as revisions to the proposed policy directions. But by and large, what we have tried to do is take what you set for us in the vision and principles and translate that into a land use plan that delivers on that vision and those principles. The result is the official plan amendment that was before you in February of this year and now is before you for adoption this evening. We'll go to the next slide, please. The round 2 engagement that we conducted since February of this year was conducted with Lura and Associates, as well as Central Elgin staff and our team from NPG Planning Solutions. We had the opportunity to have conversations with a number of residents, both through the formal processes as well as individual phone calls and emails that were responded to. We presented the draft official plan amendment, as well as the land use plans and the various schedules. And we had a great deal of really, really important conversations and informing conversations, particularly at the open house was held. We also, through Mr. McLeod's office, worked with engaging Indigenous communities and First Nations, as well as ensuring that those relationships were established and will be ongoing as this plan moves forward to implementation. Next slide, please. So this is a summary of the feedback that we have received through the consultation. It also included 2 stakeholder workshops. One was held on heritage and one more generally, as well as a statutory public meeting under the Ontario Planning Act that occurred on March 2nd. For the land use and community structure, people felt it was important to address the amount of residential areas and ensure there were mixed-use spaces, as well as amenities such as parks and community services. There was an emphasis on the importance of commercial services in the community, and that's certainly borne out by work that Infrastructure Ontario did, identifying between 100,000 and 130,000 square feet of commercial area, including up to 27,000 square feet for a grocery store. There's the importance of community facilities and public spaces, not just parks, but trails and connectivity through the stormwater ponds, and really creating a complete and walkable neighborhood, which has been implemented through the design of the streets, but also the public spaces. The building heights and built form, there was generally support for the transitions that we had identified between higher density areas and the surrounding neighborhood. Certainly people recognize the importance of keeping taller buildings near the arterial roads, and that is the high density designated lands in the south end of the plan adjacent to John Wise Line. There was certainly a commitment and understanding that we heard and feedback regarding the importance of safety for all users and ensuring that there was pedestrian and cycling friendly infrastructure, as well as providing the ability for people to move between neighborhoods and be able to drive safely. In the In the area of public realm and connectivity, there's certainly support for the interconnections that are important to trails and parks and active transportation routes and connectivity to the Millers Pond subdivision to the north, ensuring the two neighborhoods have access, particularly as it's anticipated there will be a school in the community facility area. And there was also great feedback on understanding the importance of prioritizing walking, cycling, and recreation and making sure people have safety to move through the community. And then the revised draft key policies were regarding a diversity of housing options and supporting the range of housing options and densities to address affordability, as council had identified, the importance of a vibrant main street within the development, the importance of parks and green spaces and cultural heritage facilities, and finally ensuring development occurs in a coordinated and sustainable manner. Next slide, please. So just some of the information and metrics on the engagement methods. The Indigenous consultation was completed by Mr. McLeod. It is ongoing with 9 First Nation communities. The public open house on February 24th had 122 people attend, which is more than the number, slightly more than the number that attended the open house in the fall. The statutory public meeting on March 2nd had approximately 15 residents in the council chambers. Not everyone spoke, and there were a number of letters and comment documents that were received from residents. There were 2 stakeholder workshops held on February 26th and 27th virtually, one on culture and heritage and one on the general stakeholder workshop. The public feedback that we have received was through one-on-one conversations at the open house and at the statutory public meeting, some more formal presentations, as well as the written documentation that Ms. Leach provided to council. The Indigenous feedback is very important for this process, given the presence of Indigenous artifacts on 2 portions of the site, and those ongoing conversations will continue and are important, particularly as those 2 portions of the site are of interest to those First Nations. The stakeholder meetings were completed to provide an update on feedback from the round 1 engagement and how it had been incorporated into the draft land use plan, and then a discussion of the draft land use plan and the policies themselves as well. All of this has informed the revisions, some revisions to the land use plan, as well as the policies, which have been updated to provide greater clarity and provide clearer language in certain areas that people had questions and concerns about. We'll go to the next slide, please. You will have seen this particular drawing a number of times in the previous presentations, and it is largely the same, starting at the left side at Sunset, with the pinky purple areas being the institutional uses. One is this Southwest Center for Forensic Mental Health, and council may recall that the province has advised that they require 42 acres of land to be retained for future provincial purposes. So that is also the pinky purple area. There is a modified grid street pattern that goes through the future neighborhood to create walkability and those straight lines that encourage walking and cycling. The yellow areas are lower density housing that is single, semis, and a form of row housing. Where you see the dashes on it, that is a rear lane access, because individual driveways to those collector neighborhood roads are a challenge, and in the areas near Fairview, they would be creating potential traffic issues and traffic safety issues. The orange areas are medium density housing, and that will be up to 3 to 6 stories in height. It will be apartments, some forms of townhouses and stacked townhouses. And then the pink areas adjacent to John Wise Line are the high density housing that will be up to 8 stories. It will be with surface parking. It's difficult at 8 stories to put in underground parking. The blue areas, the bright blue adjacent to the OPP station is community facilities, and the darker blue areas are where there is an Ontario Heritage Trust easement that's going to be placed on the lands in the future, and that is where there are Indigenous archaeological artifacts that will remain in situ. And finally, we have 3 parks and some great green space areas, as well as the stormwater ponds, which are the brighter green. We'll go to the next slide, please. This is the building heights map. It is largely the same as the version you saw on February 2nd. The one change is in the northwest, where we are limiting the height to 4 stories. That's in response to feedback from residents who are adjacent and their homes front on Sunset Drive. Next slide, please. This is the road classification map. It has not changed since the last version. We continue to provide those road connections to Sunset, to Fairview, to John Wise Line, and provide a modified grid to support walkability and people moving through the community. Next slide, please. This is the public realm plan. We have linked this with active transportation as well as gateway features, 2 on John Wise and 1 at Sunset and Karen and the future interior collector road. We've also identified where trails will be provided to connect people to public spaces and giving them different options to walk to or cycle to those public spaces, and showing just how overall people can move through this community. And next slide, please. Finally, this is a phasing appendix, and that may seem like a bit of a nomenclature change. It's actually deliberate. An appendix is something that can be changed by council resolution. So this is the proposed phasing for the development of the hospital lands. You'll see that phase 1 is in and around the Southwest Center for Forensic Mental Health, brings that east-west collector in opposite Karen Street, and includes a portion of the low-density residential to provide phase 1 with a mix of housing. And it has been, we've been working with Mr. Brooks and Mr. Paul to align phasing with servicing. Phase 2 will see the development of the downtown Main Street, which is just around that phase 2 name on the map. More mix of housing, including low-density housing and medium-density housing. And finally, phase 3 will see the balance of the community develop with the complete mix of housing and the remainder of the downtown Main Street and additional parks. What I think is important to note, just to return to phase 1, there will be 2 parks developed as part of phase 1. And that's an important commitment to future residents in ensuring that their children will have a place to play within the community that they live in. We'll go to the next slide, please. So I just want to highlight with the black arrows 3 land use map changes that we have made. The first is in the northwest area behind the homes on Sunset Drive. We had received feedback from those residents with concern about the nature and intensity of development in this area. As I said, when we looked at the heights map, we have limited the height to 4 stories. We've also required a 4-meter buffer on the medium density lands from those rear yards. We were asked to swap the medium density with the stormwater pond location, and it's not possible. The stormwater pond is going to service a significant component of phase 1 and phase 2 of the development. So we need it in the area that it is to provide that drainage for to the stormwater pond from the development. But what we have done is scaled back and moved the stormwater pond a bit to move some of the development over to the east on the east of that internal road. And we've called it a special policy area. In the policies, we've noted the limitation on height and that there is to be 100 units developed in this particular area. The second change is immediately south of there, and it relates to the Southwest Center for Forensic Mental Health. We received information from the province that they would like a portion of what was medium density lands changed to institutional so that it could be an expansion of the Southwest Center for Forensic Mental Health. We have incorporated that into the land use plan. At the same time, we received feedback through the public process, and particularly at the public meeting, of the importance of adding housing as a permitted use in the institutional lands, and we agree with that. For the larger block at the northeast corner of Sunset and John Wise, housing will be permitted. For the Southwest Center for Forensic Mental Health, housing will not be permitted, and that is why it's a special policy area. Housing and that use just are not a good fit, not a good fit because of the amount of land, but also not a good fit from land use compatibility perspectives. And then finally, over on the east, you may recall there was a road going north to the Ontario Heritage Trust easement lands. We have removed that road from the plan, and we have provided an identification of the easement. The road would not be needed for traffic purposes, and it would end up being a municipal asset that Central Elgin would have to maintain. And there is a way to access that land safely should it need to be accessed without a road being built. So that road has been removed. As I mentioned, there were a number of policy updates providing clarity and greater flexibility in some areas as we move forward with pieces of the plan, particularly around the stormwater ponds and some of the natural heritage features. Just being able to get to the point where there is a solidified engineering design, for example, of the stormwater pond, and being able to fit that to the land use plan and adjust the boundaries as needed. It's not a wholesale change, but it is just minor boundary adjustments, if you can think of it that way. Next slide, please. So the next steps are this. We're before you this evening recommending that official plan amendment 0126 be adopted. There is a report and a bylaw on your agenda this evening to do that. The Planning Act requires that the materials be submitted to Elgin County within 15 days of your decision. So we will work with Central Elgin staff to finalize those materials for submission to the county. Next slide, please. Finally, what OPA 126 achieves. First, it implements the vision and guiding principles that you set 16 months ago, including key priorities addressing housing affordability and housing mix, providing a dedicated space in the downtown Main Street for a grocery store, and providing future community facilities, all within a connected community that connects to the existing surrounding communities in this part of Central Elgin. It provides new housing at a range of densities to support more affordable choices, both rental and home ownership. It is a walkable community in providing that connectivity both on street and off street into public spaces, into schools and parks and recreation facilities and the downtown Main Street. There will be new jobs in the Sunset Institutional Corridor, as well as in the downtown Main Street area. The plan provides for policies for the conservation of heritage buildings, and it addresses legislative and policy requirements in Ontario. And finally, it conforms to and implements the Elgin County Official Plan, most notably that the Elgin County Official Plan now includes the entirety of the hospital lands as a settlement area. So your official plan does need to be amended to bring these lands into the settlement area, which OPA 1/26 does. But it also provides a plan for development of the lands that is phased and tied to how servicing will be implemented, and gives you and the community and the development partner the path forward for development of these lands to achieve your vision and principles. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Tanner. Questions or comments? Council? Councillor Griffin.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank you, Mary Lou, for your presentation. And there are things in this that I'm happy with. So I'm going to start by saying that I appreciate that you've built in language for protecting heritage resources where possible and for seeking adaptive reuse. I also saw that Infrastructure Ontario asked for you to remove statements about rights of First Nations, and you told them to kick rocks. And I think that that's probably the best way that you can handle that. But I do have some serious questions here about the feedback that's been involved, because it doesn't look it doesn't look as neutral as I would have liked it to look. I would like to talk about the survey material first. And my concern with this is that it looks like there's framing bias. So when I look at these survey questions that you used to try and get public feedback, I see that you've got questions framed around whether people like what's going on, and they're framed around what is very supported, somewhat supported, unsure, or not supported. And that's not a standard survey question. Normally you would see 2 varies, 2 somewhats, and potentially a neutral. And I think that that creates a really natural, when I see 2 greens on my circle, when I see a dark green and a light green, and it's described as if the majority of people like the thing, I'm not convinced that that's true when somewhat supportive could be 30% or 60%. So how were these questions constructed, and why is it that you feel that they're meaningful?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. The questions were actually constructed by Lura Consulting, who are a public consultation firm. It's always a challenge in these types of public engagement sessions to provide people with enough information to ask them their opinion without providing information overload, and also to try and not lead people to answers. So they are open-ended, and the structure of the answers is to give people the opportunity to provide their feedback, whether they like it or not, but also to expand on why or why not. And the qualitative answers are actually the more important. For me, they're the more important part, because it gives us information about changes people would like to see or things that they have questions about that we can answer.
Thank you. Just
Thank you.
one quick sec. I thought Councillor Griffin had her hand up. Great.
Thank you. So I do have a supplementary to that, and that's that I'd also would like to talk about the qualitative information, because I'm seeing this framing bias in the survey questions, but then the next thing that I'm seeing is that we have qualitative information that doesn't feel like it matches to what's actually happening here. So for example, you have described that we did a council workshop, and that's true, and you've described many of the things that arose from it. And I do remember that we talked about a Main Street, but I think that overwhelmingly what I remember the most people talking about with Main Streets was that they are a dying model, and many people talked about the idea of a sense of place, a sense of community, doing a center square that could be commercial, but also create something community and cultural. And I don't see that qualitative element reflected. And then similarly, when I see these survey questions and I see the qualitative information that follows, I get those same remarks. The public is also saying we would rather a square, or you get 73% of people said on Post-it notes that they don't like the idea of the Main Street the way it currently is, and many specifically said they'd like a square. But then I see that marked as probably not relevant data. So I'm seeing that there is, in fact, a great deal of qualitative that seems to match each other, and then it's being disregarded. So that's where I'm concerned that if we have bias, if we have framing biases in our survey questions, and we're choosing and cherry picking qualitative data, then I don't know how we can feel confident that this is truly reflective of what either council or the community that we're working for is asking for. And that's a big question here, because I know that we're on a tight timeline. And if we were not satisfied with this tonight and we didn't pass it, then I don't know what that looks like between us and the province.
Mary Lou, did you wish to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. I can't speak to what it means for the relationship between Central Elgin and the province, but I can speak to the downtown Main Street and a square in the downtown Main Street. We did make adjustments to the land use plan to put a park plaza in the downtown Main Street. And the policies are clear that it is to be ground floor commercial and ground floor retail and service businesses with housing above. And it is when you create that mix of commercial spaces, ground floor, the design of them matters, so they're closer to the street. There's a connectivity, there's windows and doors that you can see, that you can walk into, and you know where you're going, and it's a welcoming environment. And the amount of what we call glazing matters in order to make it a really, really attractive space. And that's all captured in the downtown Main Street policies. I think the other thing to remember is just going back to the work that Infrastructure Ontario did. The report that they had from Parcel Economics identified the need for commercial retail space, retail and service commercial space in this community. And when we had the vision workshop with council, we looked at different opportunities. We looked at images of big box retail. We looked at images of a typical suburban plaza. And we looked at images of well-designed downtown main streets that have that mix of housing, where the streetscape matters, where there's public spaces adjacent to the downtown main street, and when there's housing that's provided above the main floor commercial. And the downtown Main Street policies achieve all of that. They will be the medium density housing form of 3 to 6 stories. They will have housing above the ground floor. And there is a plaza in that downtown Main Street area that we included based on the feedback we heard in phase 1. And that has been carried forward in the final version of the plan.
Thank you, Ms. Tanner. Deputy Mayor, please. You want in after?
Through you, Mayor, I'd like to thank Mary Lou, staff, former staff, and the community that got involved with this, and the council that we've had. This has been a huge project, and something that I think the majority of council are proud of. And I don't know that the community actually realizes how much work went into making all this happen. It was a big undertaking, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished in this term. With that, I'd be happy to move this motion.
I'm going to have Councillor Graham speak, and then, thanks, Councillor Graham.
Through the chair to Mary Lou. Mary Lou, can you run me through the changes that were made after the first set of feedback to the plans, and then the changes that were made after the second set of feedback with the public meetings? Because from my understanding, comparing the two designs of it, there seems to be like an additional green space that's maybe like 1/200th or 1/300th of the design itself. And from my attendance at those public meetings, the majority of sticky notes that I saw were, again, a centralized square, more green space, and more trail systems. And so I'm just wondering if you can, just to reiterate that, if you can run me through the changes you made to the design from the first set of feedback and then the changes you made to the design in the second set. Thank you.
Certainly, through you, Mayor Sloan. So after the first round of public engagement, we changed the design of the downtown Main Street to add additional green space, which will be a public plaza in the downtown Main Street. We added closer to the intersection of Karen and Sunset on the south side of that collector, an area that has been identified for a grocery store to meet the square footage requirements in the market study done by Parcel Economics, and just really identify this as where the grocery store is going to be. We made adjustments to the road pattern coming in off of Sunset based on feedback from members of the community. And we also added the trail network to provide off-road trails, off-road trail connections from various parts of the community to parks. That's mostly in the northwest area. And then arising from the second round of public engagement, there were the changes in the northwest that I described in the medium density and stormwater pond areas based on feedback from those particular residents. And although we weren't able to flip the stormwater pond and the housing as they had requested for servicing reasons, we have scaled back the development there. We've provided a buffer requirement in the official plan policies to buffer their rear yards from the development. That's going to provide greater distance. And with lowering the height to 4 stories, it's also going to lower the impact on them from their rear yards. So it provides more separation and a lower height. And we've moved some of the medium density housing closer to the Miller's Pond subdivision. There was the change relative to the Southwest Center for Forensic Mental Health that I described. It's a land use change. We added housing as a permitted use in the institutional designation. That'll be the block in the Northeast Corridor. We provided additional clarity on policies related to the downtown Main Street and parking. That was based on feedback from Doug Terry Holmes, and we also clarified the height and density provisions for the downtown Main Street so that it would match the medium density designated lands and would be 3 to 6 stories in height. And that would provide more surety that housing would be built above those commercial spaces at the ground level.
Councillor Graham.
Thank you for that. But what I was asking was, what changes came about from the feedback on the green spaces? Because in both public sessions, the majority of feedback was about green spaces. So other than that 1/100th or 1/200th little piece, I would like to know, based on the feedback from the public and our constituents asking for more green space, if there was any changes to the plan based on that feedback.
Ms. Tanner.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sloan. There was the public plaza in the downtown Main Street. And the other provision that we have provided is to manage between, on the northwest area, the park designation, the stormwater, when the engineering is done for the stormwater pond, if there's land that is designated stormwater pond, it won't be used for that. It will join the park. And then over on the area where both of the Ontario Heritage Trust easement lands are, it's a similar provision in terms of when the final definition of the trust lands is concluded. Any lands, any lessening of what we've shown on this plan will become, in one instance, stormwater pond, and in another instance, park and open space. That's the smaller one to the south. We have also made park and open space permitted uses on the Ontario Heritage Trust easement lands as well. So if there is, it gives flexibility as the detailed implementation moves forward to put more park space into these areas. Based on the work that we are doing, we anticipate that that will occur, but at this point in time, we can't say definitively. So the best we've done is provide the flexibility in the policies.
Thank you. Councillor Griffin.
Thank you. Through you, I do have another question, and this is about heritage issues. And that is that, in keeping with some of my questions about the statistics, I see that one of the statistics that was written off as irrelevant was that when you asked about the community interest in preserving the hospital buildings, 73% of the community said yes, but that was written off as irrelevant. And that worries me because we do have lines in this policy that say that adaptive reuse is best if possible, but we also have lines that say acknowledging the area's history is ideal, and that could include murals or other things, or preserving pieces of the buildings. And that leaves me wondering whether we know what a success story is, or if we're hedging our bets so that we can say that we've achieved what we achieved no matter which direction this goes. And yet it looks as though the people that care enough to engage with this issue do have a position on it. So, I mean, what degree of control do we have in that? Because right now we've got a Crown statement that they would like to demolish, and yet we have a policy that says we would like adaptive reuse. What level of pushback do we have here? And also, I mean, let's say that we've written into our policy that we want to save pieces of building. I don't even know what that means in the context of demolishing. Do we get to step in on Infrastructure Ontario and tell them that we want to take things out first? How does that go for us?
Ms. Tanner, do we have level of pushback, and can we take things out of the building? I think are the two questions.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. We have provided the heritage policies to the best of our ability, given the laws of Ontario. and what is available to landowners. What the province has is an exemption from the requirements of the Ontario Heritage Act, and the letter you've received has advised you that they are going to exercise those rights. Should they not do that and those lands are transferred to another owner, the policies of this plan will apply to the cultural heritage resources. So we have provided the very best planning policy we can around this particular issue, recognizing that the province currently is the landowner, and what they have now advised is their intention. There is an ability to work with the province, and I think there's an interest from the province, from my understanding, about commemoration, potentially removing elements of the buildings, some of the pieces that you can see from the street in terms of the design of the building and the design elements, and figuring out a way to incorporate those into some components of the development, whether it's in the community, a future community center or school, or different opportunities in some of the public spaces.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor.
Mayor Sloan, I'm just wondering if there's a seconder for my motion.
Call the vote.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay. The question that we're now calling is, I have a mover and a seconder. Do I have a mover and a seconder, Ms. Leach?
Your worship. Your worship, I have moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Watson, that the official plan amendment 126 for the former hospital lands attached to Schedule A to report CAO 1526 be adopted, that staff be authorized to make minor technical or formatting changes as may be required, and that staff may be directed to submit the adopted official plan amendment 126 to the County of Elgin for approval.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you for your comments. Correspondence requiring action, SE 0226, special events policy. May I ask for a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Griffin, Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Griffin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that bylaw 2026-26 be adopted, that the Special Events Committee be disbanded as of April 13th, 2026, that the Special Events Policy and Special Events Administrative Procedures Manual attached to Schedule A and B respectively to Report SE 226 be approved, that authority for the approval and issuance of special event permits be delegated to the clerk in alignment with other licensing and permitting functions of the municipality per bylaw 2691, that bylaw number 2026-5, fees bylaw, be amended to include a special event permit fee of $50, and that staff be permitted to prepare a communications campaign that includes direct engagement with special events permit applicants to communicate process changes and promote the new inquiry and application procedures.
Any questions or comments on this? Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mayor, I applaud Delaney Leach's efforts in this. It'll make the whole system more streamlined and reduce stress on the community as they try to get their special events to go through. This is a good thing, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Excuse me. B, received for information. We have a letter from Infrastructure Ontario, the minutes of Heritage Central Elgin, correspondence received from Heritage Central Elgin with resolution that was carried out at the Heritage Central Elgin meeting on March 26th, 2026, and a letter received from Councillor Griffin, who is the chair, and Dusty Underhill, who is the general manager, regarding the proposed consolidation of conservation authorities. If I could get a mover and a seconder, please.
May I move to divide out the heritage minutes for its own resolution?
An amendment to move the heritage motion. You're talking about number 3?
Yes, I'd like to address it separately to the rest of the correspondence.
Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor of having this discussed separately? Opposed? Motion fails.
Then, Your
Okay.
Worship, I would like to move to receive all of the correspondence and also to pursue the recommended motion through Heritage Central Elgin.
So I'm going to do this following. I've asked for a mover and a seconder, and this is being received for information. You've just done an amendment which failed. The second piece now is which we're doing, or asking for? And
Thank you,
please
Your
help me
Worship.
understand, because we've got a lot of people here in the gallery that I think want to see some of this get discussed.
That's a great question. Thank you, Your Worship. So in the correspondence from Heritage Central Elgin, they asked that we pass a resolution communicating to Rob Flack and Infrastructure Ontario and certain others about our opposition to the Psych land being demolished. I would like us not only to receive for information, but also to pass a resolution to that effect.
Okay, Mr. McLeod, for that to happen, I would have to have a mover and a seconder. Tell me, I mean, I have to go to the technical experts. Is that correct?
That would be correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so you'd like to put it forward?
Yes, please.
Okay, seconder? Councillor Graham. Is everyone familiar? Do we need to read it, Ms. Leach, or do you want to? So essentially that Councillor Griffin has requested that item number 3 be separated due to a resolution that was carried out. All those in favor?
Pardon me. I wasn't asking, we've already failed the motion to separate it. I understand that. So I'm moving on to simply, can we receive everything, but also adopt a resolution as requested by Heritage Central Elgin in their correspondence? So that could be passing everything and going.
Okay, all those in favor? Okay. Don, do you want to help me out on this? Thank you.
So the original motion is to receive and file. There was a subsequent motion to divide, which was defeated. So if council's moving to receive and file, then that item is seen to be dispensed with, and there can't be any further action taken with it.
Through you then, Your Worship, to Mr. McLeod, would you prefer for me to move to bring a notice or a motion without notice at the end of other business?
I think once the item's been dispensed with, that's put it to bed.
Councillor Graham, or Griffin, Graham, sorry, to move the,
Okay, so let me just understand this. So Heritage Centre Elgin, as a board of the municipality of Centre Elgin, has written us a letter. They want us to probably read it out loud so that the public can hear it. And at the same time, they want us to consider it as responding to Minister Flack and IO about the unneeded destruction of some of the psych buildings that have been declared by the province as heritage buildings. And Mr. McLeod, you're saying that because we're going to vote to accept it, we can't take any action on their request. Is that what you're telling me?
That is correct. It's been lumped in with the receipt for information. So once that item is received for information, that is putting it to bed.
Follow-up question. So then how do we action something?
Once it's received.
Once it's received for information. So we can't action anything that we receive for information?
That's correct.
okay? Okay, sorry. All right. I think we've had the discussion. It's been received for information. Any other questions or comments? Mover and a seconder, please. On the original one, do I have a mover and a seconder, Ms. Leach, on the original? Wish she was right.
Your Worship, I don't have a mover and seconder.
So hold on, Councillor. Mover and a seconder, and then okay, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Watson, mover and a seconder, Ms. Leach. And now we're going to Councillor Graham. Thank you.
So just to clarify a little bit more, who decides that these are all lumped together rather than taken individually?
So the item was put on the agenda under items or being received for information. That's where the agenda was prepared. So that's the way they're being dealt with. That's all I can say on that. It is where it is on the agenda, and that's the way it has to be dealt with. So there was a motion to divide, to bring it out, and I was going to repeat it.
All those in favor of all those in favor? Opposed? We have a mover and a seconder. Sorry, it's just receiving it for information. Go ahead, Councillor Connors, you can.
Your worship, to clarify the motion on the floor at the moment, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Watson, that correspondence items number 1 to 4 be received for information.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to reports, the CAO 1326, repeal of the former Village of Port Stanley bylaw number 2390. Mr. McLeod. I guess I better get a mover in a seconder. Deputy Mayor. Councillor Connors, thank you. Over to you. Okay, Ms. Leach, this one's coming back to you.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Council. As noted in the brief report on this matter, the municipality received contact from a local law office as part of a land sale transaction taking place in Port Stanley. It was identified that a former Village of Port Stanley bylaw dating back to 1988 was registered on title for the property in question. The purchasing party has requested that the bylaw be removed. They would like clean title on that now that they've taken ownership. On investigation, essentially the previous landowner dating back to 1977 received grant funding from the government transacted through the municipality, which caused that bylaw to be registered on title. It is unclear because the records involve going back so far in time, whether that grant funding was actually repaid. It's not possible for us to verify that, but staff have worked with legal counsel to pursue the full scope of the issue, and at this time recommend that council formally repeal that bylaw so that the title can be updated, have those instruments removed, and proceed with a clean title for the new property owner.
Thank you, Ms. Leach. Any questions or comments? Technical issue by all accounts? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. CAO 1426, Hospital Lands Project Update. Mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Watson. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report CAO 1426 be received.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Moving on to the Director of Planning and Engineering Services, DPE 1826, award of proposal CE 2026, Port Stanley East Headland Shore Protection Detailed Design. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Griffin and Deputy Mayor Noble, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Griffin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that the proposal submitted by Aquafor Beach Limited for the Port Stanley East Headland Shore Protection Detailed Design Project be accepted for the total cost of $290,770, excluding HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the contract.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Second tender, 7th Ave Road reconstruction. Linked directly, I believe, Mr. Brooks, to the new school in Belmont. And I'm just sort of parenthetically, no, it'll do. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Mover and a seconder for this one, please. Councillor Connors, Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion for that is moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that Titan Group Construction, Inc. be selected to complete the 7th Avenue Road reconstruction project at a total price of $1,008,808.25, inclusive of a contingency of $1 million and exclusive of HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the contract.
Any questions or comments? All good. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Looking forward to that. DPE 2026, application for draft plan of subdivision approval. Eagle Ridge subdivision 3, or subdivision phase 3. Mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Watson, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Watson, that the municipal draft plan conditions attached as Schedule A to report DPE 2026 be endorsed and forwarded to the Director of Planning and Development for the County of Elgin with requests that they be included in the county's decision regarding the proposed draft plan of subdivision.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. DPE 2126, application for an exemption to the noise bylaw. It's that time of year. Mover and seconder. Councillor Watson, Councillor Connors, thank you both.
Mayor Sloan, the motion for that is moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Connors, that an exemption to bylaw number 212, being a bylaw to control noise in the municipality of Central Elgin as amended, be granted to allow the St. Thomas Gun Club to hold their annual trap shooting events taking place on May 17th, July 18th to 19th, and September 6th, 2026.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. DPE 2226, application for consent 45587 Fruit Ridge Line. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Watson, Deputy Mayor.
Mayor Sloan, the motion for that is moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that consent application E1826 pertaining to 45587 Fruit Ridge Line be supported subject to the conditions outlined in attachment 3 of report DPE 2226, and that staff be directed to forward a copy of the council resolution regarding report DPE 2226 to the Elgin County Land Division Committee for consideration.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. DPE 2326, application for consent 5699 Sunset Road. Mr. DeBacker. Mover and seconder, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Griffin, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Griffin, that consent application E2726 pertaining to 5699 Sunset Road be supported subject to the conditions outlined in attachment 3 of report TPE 2326, and that staff be directed to forward a copy of the council resolution regarding report DPE 2326 to the Elgin County Land Division Committee for consideration.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Building Department fees update. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Griffin, Councillor Connors, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion for that is moved by Councillor Griffin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that bylaw 2026-5 fees bylaw be updated to include the Building Department fees attached to Schedule A to report DPE 2526. The bylaw 2026-28 Building Department be adopted. The Building Department fees be adjusted annually based on the Consumer Price Index, and that a building reserve fund target of 150% of gross operating expenses be established to mitigate a cyclical construction activity impacts.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. DPE 2625 parking machines modem upgrade. Mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Griffin, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Griffin, that $24,326.40 be drawn from the parking reserve to facilitate the upgrading of existing parking machine modems from 3G to 4G technology.
Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Director of Public Works and Community Services, jet ski rental survey results and recommendation. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Watson, Councillor Connors, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Connors, that the establishment of jet ski rental operations on municipal property be prohibited due to public safety concerns, enforcement limitations, potential municipal liability, and impacts on the character and enjoyment of the Port Stanley waterfront.
Questions or comments on this? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Number 2, CS 0626, Minister of the Environment, Conservation, Parks, Belmont Drinking Water. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Connors, Deputy Mayor, thanks.
Mayor Sloan, the motion for that is moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that report PWCS 626 regarding Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Belmont Drinking Water System Inspection Report be received.
Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. PWCS 0726 Fleet Review Recommendations. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Griffin. Maybe I don't have a seconder. Oh, Councillor Connors.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Griffin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that report PWCS 726 regarding fleet review recommendations be received, that the fleet review prepared by MCG Consulting Solutions be adopted, and that the recommendations of the fleet review further outlined in this report be implemented.
Questions and comments, please. Councillor Graham, please.
Through the chair to the CAO, in our discussion earlier, I'd asked that you section out the numbers that were applicable to purchase of vehicles and that we take it separately, or we consider taking it separately.
Just let me refer back to the numbers to make sure I got it correct. We had staff look at this. Just give me a minute. Recommendation 17 is to implement a multi-year replacement plan. Recommendation 15 is the replacement fund. Recommendation 11 is to ensure costs are captured. And recommendation 7 is for the replacement schedule. And recommendation 5 is for the point system. Recommendation 5.
Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Mayor, I don't understand how this will affect our budget. We've already approved our budget and then the review for the fleet come along, so I don't know how that plays out.
Mr. Jensen.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This information will be used in the 2027 budget.
So, sorry, did you have a follow-up, sir? Okay, so when it comes to the fleet replacement and the fund and everything, you're not starting any work on that until 27, is that correct?
We do have equipment reserves already for roads and fire. So we do have reserves already, but reviewing this document and applying it to budget will happen in 2027.
Okay, so just as a follow-up, so it will be the next council that deal with any of the specifics on fleet, costs of fleet, replacing fleet, et cetera? Because if we pass it now, then it'll immediately go into the 2027 budget.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. That would be correct. It was the only the garbage truck that we held off the 2026 budget, if you remember through our budget discussions. That will come back to this council for review and approval. This implementation plan, a number of them are policy updates and things and best practices and admin updates, but the overall recommendations, further recommendations will be coming back to council. This is allowing staff to move ahead with these implementation plans in order to bring them back to council at a later date for future discussion in the 27 budget.
Councillor Graham. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
So those sections that the CAO had mentioned, 5, 7, 17, 11, and 58, I would like to make a motion that we separate those from the recommendations so that the next council can consider those, but accept the other recommendations.
Ms. Leach has a question. My goodness.
Mayor Sloan, just clarifying from a procedural standpoint that we have an amendment on the floor tabled by Councillor Graham.
You're looking for a seconder, correct?
A seconder.
Do I have a seconder for Councillor Graham's motion? Councillor Connors.
So just to be clear to council then, through you, your worship, the amendment would be amending paragraph 3 so that the recommendations of the fleet review accepting the numbered items identified by the CAO, so numbers 17, 5, 7, 11, and 15 be exempted from implementation.
Let's just go over the numbers one more time, Ms. Leach, so that we're clear. Do you have them written down, Councillor Graham?
I believe it was 5, 7, 11, 17, and 58.
I mumbled it was 15. Sorry. So yeah, I'll put them in sequential order. 5, 7, 11, 15, 17.
Okay.
So on the amendment,
Yes. Okay. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Amendment carries. Now we're going to vote. We're going to vote on sorry, Councillor Watson, you have another question. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, yeah. Through you, Mayor, this fleet review recommendations, there's like 44 recommendations, and that's a lot to take on. And we're going to make the next council abide by a lot of this going forward. I'm not sure if I really, I wish they would come at us with a lot less recommendations all at once instead of 44 at once. Like, I just can't absorb it all, right? And we're handcuffing the next council already by that. And we never were really handcuffed. Well, we were handcuffed a lot in the start, but I don't want to do that to the next council. So that's just my thoughts on this right now.
So I think what we need to do is, first of all, Mr. Mayor, do you want to comment on the workload, the number of things, and Councillor Watson's concern?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, this is just a report to council to allow us to move into these implementation stages. As Councillor Watson says, there's a number of recommendations in here. We'd like some direction that we're clear to move forward with some of these. You know, certainly we can bring, if there's any ones that we want to bring back further discussion with council. But the goal here is to allow us to adopt the fleet review and allow us to move forward with these implementation plans.
Thank you. I have Councillor Graham, and then if you need a follow-up, Councillor Watson. Councillor Graham.
Through the chair to Councillor Watson. So that's why we separated out that vote that we just had. That's why we separated out those 5 sections so that we wouldn't handcuff the next council. The other ones are basically theoretical things. Well, not theoretical, but they're like training and things that we actually can do without putting any additional costs for fleet.
Does that help a little bit? Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Watson? All right. Seeing no other questions, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Director of Corporate Services Treasurer, mover and a seconder on the community grants. Mover and a seconder, Councillor Griffin, Deputy Mayor, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Griffin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that the 2026 community grant allocations as recommended in Table 1 of Report DCS 426 be approved, and that funding be drawn from the Community Grants Reserve in the amount of $23,739 and the remaining $1,261 from the tax levy per the approved 2026 budget.
Any questions or comments on this one? Year 2 for the program. Thank you, Ms. Leach. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. For the bylaws. Can I get a mover and a seconder on the bylaws, please? Councillor Connors, hold on, do you have a question? Go ahead, Councillor Graham.
I'd like to separate out bylaw 2026-026 and 2026-030, please.
Seconder? Oh, how does that work? Do we need a seconder for that? We just do it? I'm happy to separate those out. Council, will a council good for that? Ms. Leach, you might, oh. Deputy Mayor?
For clarification, each of those then to be addressed separately or those two to be addressed together?
Separately.
Okay, so 1 to 5, 6 and 7 separate. Okay, Ms. Leach, happy with that if the council are? Okay, all right. So can I get a, first of all, can I get a mover and a seconder for 1 to 5? No. All right, one more time. 1, bylaw 1, 3, 4, 5, and 7. Can I get a mover and a seconder for those? Councillor Watson, Deputy Mayor.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that bylaws 2026-20, 2026-27, 2026-28, 2026-29, and 2026-31 be read a first time and passed.
All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Bylaw 2026026 is special events policy. Mover and a seconder for the bylaw. Councillor Griffin, Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Councillor Griffin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, the bylaw 2026-26 be read a first time and passed.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Bylaw 2026030, the official plan amendment. Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor. Councillor Connors.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Connors, that bylaw 2026-030 be read a first time and passed.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. All right, thank you very much. Moving to a motion and notice of motion from Councillor Griffin. Councillor Griffin, do you have a seconder?
Not yet.
Okay. Do you want to start with a seconder or do you wish to speak to it? Okay, so you've got a seconder, Councillor Graham seconds, and to Councillor Griffin to speak to. Thank you.
Thank you, through you. Well, I sent out some correspondence to the council at large on the weekend, and I know this was a 1,000-page agenda, so I will start by saying if there's anyone that did not have time to read that and would like us to defer to next month, I understand that, because even 2 more pages probably felt like a lot this weekend. This is about compost. We've all had people ask about it in our communities, and someone asked me recently why it doesn't happen in our community. And I said, well, when you have a community that's got rural and then little pockets, then what you're going to have is how many houses do you drive past for green bin collection that are already doing it at home before you get to the one that's using it? And what does it look like? Because we really need to know what areas to serve, or if to serve everyone, or, you know, what these pieces are. So I started by putting out a survey, which I posted to Lyndhurst, Belmont, Union, Sparta, Port Stanley communities and things online, just to try and gather some data before I put a motion together. And I'm glad that I did, because I did find a few things I didn't expect. We've had people ask about a number of compost systems over the years. There was not a lot of interest in kitchen cyclers, although there are people using them and enjoying them that I have spoken to. I found that overwhelmingly people really weren't interested. So maybe that would be a waste of staff time and energy for us to pursue. On the other hand, there were lots of folks that said that if, instead of just providing those vertical sort of gravity compost bins that you can buy from our building now, that if we had the spin ones that you can do out in your yard, that they would be interested to buy those from us if we could get that bulk rate for them. There were people that said that they have the space for it, they just really don't know how they're starting, and if we had some sort of education offerings for them, they'd really like that. And there was still a huge interest in green bins, although mainly in built-up areas. So what I'm recommending is that we get staff to look at some sort of cost and offering options. So for example, St. Thomas already has green bin collection. What if they were willing to service to the places directly adjacent to them? And what would that cost be? Versus what if we did actual pickup in some of our other built up areas? So I'd like to get some options so that we can understand what those costs would be and how many people we can serve by them. And there were a few interesting things that people brought forward as well that I would be happy to share with staff, such as other communities that are doing sort of depot type drop-offs, where instead of going house to house, because that does create landfill and fuel consumption and other considerations, that they have areas you can take the compost to. And I don't know what the popularity would be, but I think we're never going to find out until we really start to decide we want to explore and investigate. So if you'd like to address it today, I think that's lovely. And if anyone needs some reading time, I've got some good data and we could also defer.
Questions or comments? Councillor Connors.
Through you, Mayor. I believe we've discussed this before. I think it came up some time ago, but my question really revolves around staff. And I know they're taxed. We heard this last month at one of our meetings. So, Mr. McLeod, could you speak to the capacity of staff at this moment?
And also maybe get into cost if you have any comparables for other jurisdictions. Thank you.
Sure. So I would look to my senior staff to see what the capacity would be like within your departments to address something like this at this time.
Through the mayor, we can certainly take a look at this. Alex has done some preliminary work going back a few years. It's certainly something we can look at if council is willing to proceed in that direction.
The costs that were looked at, they're sort of all over the map. When you look at the City of London, they implemented the green bin program, I think it's 3 years ago now, 2.5 years ago. And their cost to start, I believe, was $3.5 million. And that was to distribute the green bins, the little ones you put by your sink, and also the green bins. And I don't have any of the costs for their ongoing yearly costs. The City of Windsor and Essex County have a program. It is becoming more popular. It's just hard to find costs what everyone's paying.
Yeah, and just on that, is it not fair to say that even if it was to go through, it wouldn't be implemented until after the next election? I mean, we're in April, right?
That'd be correct. There'd be a cost associated with that that would have to be applied to the 27 budget.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Watson, please.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. And maybe I'll ask a question of senior staff, and the only guy that's been here for a while is Mr. Brooks. Is there any history on us trying to do this ever before? And could you give us some insight on that? Thanks.
Staff have never undertaken a detailed study into green bins. So we've done some work in the background. As Mr. Mayor said, Alex had done some initial research going back 3 or 4 years to get some initial costs. I don't know how valid they are in $2026. So I think any of that would need to be revisited.
Questions or comments? Any other further? Deputy Mayor.
Through Mayor, being as rural as we are, most folks I've talked to are happy not to have the green bins and not to have the added cost to Central Elgin at this time. So maybe as we grow in the next 25 years, that'd be something that would be more interesting. But at this time, I don't see where there's interest.
Thank you. Councillor Griffin, please. Or Councillor Graham.
I think that, I think it's worth investigating because it's not just the standard green bin anymore. There's all kinds of different programs. So when I went to Roma or AMO, one of them, I talked to the food cycler people and I was able to negotiate them giving me a few, like 7 or 8 food cyclers. And what I did is I dispersed them out to different community members throughout Central Elgin. And I've had nothing but good feedback from them. So I think that, if we can it's not just looking at a green bin program, it's looking at all the different options for composting right now. And if staff says they have the time, I don't see why we wouldn't want to move in a direction that is going to be more responsible climate-wise to help the community, especially when we've gotten calls about it. We've gotten, it was part of the debate, part of the questions at the debate when we were originally elected as well.
I'll just comment. I don't disagree, Councillor Graham. The problem is the cost. And when we have our friends in Southold that provided it, they only do garbage every other week. Right. So there's only a certain amount of capacity. I'm not debating it's not an issue, but at the end of the day, I'd rather garbage to start. And I mean, that's my point of view. Go ahead, please.
But that's what I'm saying. It's more than just looking at what used to be the standard compost program, right? So if you get these recyclers and they're, for the regular person, they're $350. I don't know what they were as if you buy a huge amount of them because they didn't charge me anything. But I mean, even if it's looking at $200 to $300 per household, and we have 14,000 people right now, but how many are rural? Probably 6. So that would kind of take that out of there. And then people that actually want to do it. So it could be a lot less cost than what we're talking about, like not in the millions that each person or each household gets one of those composters in their house. But that's only one option. There's multiple other compost options at this point. So it'd be good to have staff come back with a little bit of information on what potentially would be the costs.
Okay. Councillor Griffin?
Thank you. Through you, I think it's relevant to note as well that sometimes costs increased in one place are mitigated in other places. So for example, we use a cart system for garbage because we are able to charge a higher service fee for larger carts. And we do that because the fuel consumption to drive the extra kilograms of waste is a cost on our community, and people who are creating more waste are paying for more waste. But I would not be surprised to find that there are people who, if we are offering a compost service and compost is being picked up, suddenly find that they don't need the largest size of cart anymore. And there will be savings in those places. And in a bigger picture way too, one of the questions that came up in our OPA written correspondence that we received today was around, you know, if you're going to add, say, 10,000 people to your community, how much faster do you lose landfill space, and what is the next step from there? And undertaking to find new landfill spaces and things, that can be a huge project for a council and a very expensive project for a council. So just because there is a potential cost, which we would hope to have investigated so that we're not just looking at service options, but also the costs. But yes, costs could go up, but that doesn't mean that there's not savings that come with them.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? Motion fails. Now, I need a mover and a seconder to proceed into closed. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Connors, thank you.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Connors. The council proceed into closed session at 9:19 p.m. in order to address matters pertaining to advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose regarding the Pleasant Valley Line Bridge, a proposed acquisition of land by the municipality regarding 42343 Fruit Ridge Line in St. Thomas, and closed session minutes for the regular meeting of council dated March 9th, 2026, and special meeting of council dated March 23rd, 2026.
All in favor?